Welcome back to the New Indian Express's ThinkEdu Conclave 2021. Continuing the series of great sessions, we have some interesting and intriguing conversations lined up for you today as well. So stay tuned and enjoy. It is important to keep in touch with your roots, and mythologies help you stay rooted. We have two eminent authors who deal with just this, bringing the mythological treasures of India alive. Please welcome best-selling author Amish Tripathi, who has penned the Shiva trilogy and the Ramchandra series, among others. We also have with us Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, an Indian-American author, poet, and the professor of writing at the University of Houston. She's the author of The Mistress of Spices and The Forest of Enchantment, among other novels and short stories. We also have Kaveri Bamzai, senior journalist and author, joining the conversation.
I just want to take a moment to plug Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's new book, which is, it's truly magnificent. It's The Last Queen. It's on Rani Jindal, and someone whom we ought to have known so much about, Amish. But somehow, it's one of those stories that's lost in time, lost to history. And I want to, of course, put that question to Chitra, but I want to come to you first, Amish, and ask you, why does this happen?
So there is a problem in the way our history is written, which is why we need authors such as Chitra to revive interest, because our history was written by, at least our modern history, was written by colonial rulers. And regrettably, our establishment historians continued with that same approach. It is extremely unfortunate. So you find, I mean, this is relatively recent, Rani Jindal. I mean, this shouldn't have been a problem, but the way even the relatively recent history is shown, Nawab Wajid Ali Shah is defamed as per British, policies. Maharaja Dalip Singh is defamed again as per British policies, and very regrettably, our establishment historians have carried on this nonsensical approach. They're more loyal to the British Raj than to India, and this is reflected even in our medieval and ancient history. The way the Turkic invaders are shown, the way our ancient history is shown, the British Raj nonsense that India was never a nation. We never had a sense of a nation before the British connected us with their railway network, which is utter nonsense. It's not true. The Vishnu Puran has a lovely line describing our concept of our nation. The Vishnu Puran is at least 2,000 years old. It describes the Indian subcontinent. Uttaram yat samudrasya himadras jaiva dakshinam varsham tada bharatam nama bharti yatra santati. These lines have been erased from our history books, which is why we need someone like Chitra. There's this wonderful line I'd heard once in Africa, that till the lions get their storytellers, the stories of the hunt will glorify the hunter. When the former hunters need to know that we lions have our own storytellers now, and we are not going to follow your nonsensical interpretations anymore.
Amish, that's so lovely, because Chitra's book begins with Chinua Achebe, and the exact quotation, it's so lovely, Chitra, that he seems to have read your mind. Until the lion.
I know, that was a lovely synchronicity.
I just want to read that line out, Amish. And Chitra's book begins with it. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So fantastic. So Chitra, talk about what drew you to Rani Jindal, and what has drawn you to Draupadi, what has drawn you to Sita, but what drew you to Rani Jindal specifically, since we're talking about The Last Queen first?
So, Amish is so right. I think he and I are really on the same wavelength, as there are so many wonderful, truly inspiring characters in our mythology, in our history. And of course, I'm particularly interested in the women who, even more than the men, have been pushed aside, pushed to the wings. And in the case of a woman like Rani Jindal, defamed by the British, who created this huge smear campaign because they were so afraid of the love that her people had for her. Even after she's imprisoned by them, most unrighteously, they create this huge smear campaign showing, that she was, she was a truly evil woman. She had no values, she had no morals, etc., etc. So I think often there's been either a westernized, a kind of colonial storytelling about our great characters, particularly our great women characters, or there's been a patriarchal kind of refashioning of women like Draupadi and even Sita, refashioned in very different ways to kind of fit the patriarchal model that has come down to us through centuries. So Rani Jinda's story came to me. It was truly like a magical event. I had not heard about her, just like you, although I should have.
Yeah.
But actually, we hadn't heard about her because there's very, very little, even in the history books written by Indians. There's a lot about her husband, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. There's actually a lot about her son, Maharaja Dalip Singh. But she, who is kind of the glue, who puts all of this together, who brings all of these other characters together, she's kind of was missing. But I was very blessed because when I was in Kolkata some years back for another book, which was coming out in India, to present that book at the Kolkata Literary Meet, I walked into the auditorium a little early ahead of my presentation, and William Dalrymple was presenting his book Kohinoor. And just it so happened that as I walked in, he had projected onto the screen the painting of Maharani Jinda, which became my cover, which I later chose as my cover.
It's so beautiful.
Yes, and it really shows her character, that stoic look, that indomitable look, even though by this time her son has commissioned this painting and she's older, she's not in good health, but you can feel that strength.
And Chitra, I want to put this question to both of you. Yet there are so many interpretations, not just of our, heroes and heroines in history, but also in myth. There's so many things that you have to read. There's so many people that you have to be little constituencies who sort of, might get outraged or might get offended. You have to sort of, there's a little person sitting on your shoulder telling you, should you go there? Should you not go there? Is that something that you are conscious of when you're writing?
I'll say my part, but I know Amish has some good things to say about this as well. Every time I sit to research and therefore I'm thinking of writing, you're right. The research is like, I want everything. I want to know every single thing. But when I write, yes, of course, I'm concerned about, especially our mythological stories, stories about, Mother Sita, particularly. I was very concerned. Draupadi also, because generally she has been looked down on. She has been demonized as the woman who started the Mahabharata war because of a personal vendetta, which is not true. When you go back to the original Mahabharata, you see that the story is much more complicated. She did not start the Mahabharata war. There were many causes, most of them male causes. But I'm concerned. But finally, I have to say to myself that if I did the research, I'm not coming at it with any personal agenda. I just want to tell the stories of these wonderful, inspiring women in the hopes that they will inspire us today and that they will teach us something. So that, that's an agenda I'm hoping that all sane-minded people will be for, because it really shows the glory of India. It shows the amazing courage of these women. And it shows how complex they were and what great leadership qualities they had that we can certainly, as women today, we can learn so much from each one of them. Different lessons. Each one is teaching a different lesson.
Right. That's true. And we'll come to that thought again, the leadership lessons, I think, from each of these women, especially Rani Jinder. Amish, in your case as well, there's so much research, there's so many different Ramayans, there's so many different Mahabharats. You've written about 3 principal characters, Ram, Sita, Ravan, and your interpretations have also varied from what is the popular norm. So how do you deal with any criticism that comes your way, if it comes your way, that, this is not the Ravan we knew, he's not so accomplished. And there was a recent outcry, in fact, when an actor said that Ravan is not necessarily a villain. And I immediately thought of your book, and I wish that these people had read it and they would understand that he's not. There's so much more to him. So this kind of popular culture approach that we have to some of these people, that he's a hero, he's a villain, these black and white sort of descriptions. How do you deal with that when you actually know so much more?
Firstly, my books, I mean, and Goddess Sita, I've shown her as a warrior.
Yeah.
With Ravan, I've shown him as this thing, and they're not really secrets. The books are, I mean, the Ramchandra series has sold some 2 million copies put together.
Yes.
Shiva Trilogy is at some 3 million around. So a little more than 2 million, I think. So it's not really a secret, and I faced no controversy.
Right.
So I'm actually living proof of the example that Indians are willing to hear different points of view, different interpretations, and that is actually our core tradition.
Yeah.
A lot of I feel a lot of the opposition at times could be for political reasons, or artists themselves. Let's be honest, artists themselves create controversy because it's easy publicity and you make sales through. Let's be honest, it happens.
Right.
If you yourself avoid controversy, it doesn't happen. But there is a second reason as well, which I think we should be mindful of. We as a culture have faced not just violent attacks, but even intellectual artistic attacks for over 800, 900 years. Repeat, our temples have been attacked, idols demolished, repeatedly told that our gods are false, and that we are debauched, we're decadent. We've been told that repeatedly. After so many centuries of colonial rule, first the Turks and then the Europeans, and we became free, things didn't change. Our elite, our English-speaking elite, continued that culture of denigration. Maybe it was a little more subtle as compared to the colonial rulers, but denigration of our culture, of our traditions. So it would not be surprising for those Indians who are the vast majority of Indians who are not from the Anglicized elite to see the Anglicized elite with an air of suspicion, right? That whatever they do, they're trying to look down upon us, they're trying to denigrate our culture. And perhaps those of us who speak in English should be mindful of it. Now, I know the three of us are lucky that we have roots in the real India, but we've also got English education, so we've kind of got our feet on both boats. So we should be, and much of that non-Anglicized India is what has become much richer and much more powerful over 30 years of economic reforms. What has happened over the last 30 years is massive social change. The Anglicized elite does not control the narrative anymore.
Right.
Does not control economic levers, or indeed even political or academic levers anymore. We have seen the establishment elite, the establishment historians repeatedly run down our own heroes. Chhatrapati Shivaji, who was, in my mind, perhaps one of the greatest Indians of the last millennium, was called in the history book that I read in my school as a mountain rat.
Yeah.
And I'm originally from UP, but I'm from Maharashtra. I remember I was offended. What the hell is this? Right? Now, so you can understand that there is a real India which sees anyone who speaks English with an air of suspicion that these guys have some agenda and they actually look down upon us, and they are actually cultural inheritors of the British Raj. So perhaps those who write in English should be mindful of it. And actually, if you speak with humility, with grace, anyway, good manners is a good idea all the time. Right? But if you speak with humility and grace, then you don't trigger those things. What you said of Ravan not being a villain, Ravan being accomplished. I said it in a Hindi lit fest in Lucknow. And I said it was covered by the largest largest Hindi language newspaper. In fact, the largest newspaper in the world.
In the world.
Right? Yeah, and I got applause for that line. I said it in Hindi. I said रावण खलनायक नहीं था, रावण में भी कुछ खूबियां थी, और ये प्रभु श्री राम ने भी कहा था, सिर्फ वाल्मीकि रामायण में नहीं, कंबन रामायण में भी, and people actually applauded for that because they understood that. And then I said in Hindi, just because I respect Ravan doesn't mean I don't worship Lord Ram, and Indians understand that. So the point I'm trying to make is perhaps it's not so much what we say, maybe it's the bias of the real Indians, perhaps fairly, against the anglicized elite, which comes out at times because they assume that boss, ये तो अंग्रेजों की बात बोलेंगे, they will look down upon us. Right. Perhaps we should be mindful of that.
Right. I think good point. Chitra, what do you say to that? Because
no, I agree. I agree so much because I think one of the reasons that Forest of Enchantments, which is my novel where Mother Sita is telling her story, has been so successful, and I'm always thankful for that because you never know when a book comes out what people will think, is that while I'm glorifying Sita, I'm not putting Ram down.
Right.
And that is really important, especially for me as I'm telling women's stories, that to make a woman the central role, the central voice in a book is important, but it doesn't mean that you have to put down men. Right. Sita's glory doesn't depend on putting down anybody, Ravan or Ram or anyone. And in my book too, Ravan is a complex character and he has many good qualities. And in fact, the reason why he goes to abduct Sita is because he is avenging his own sister who has come to him and said, brother, I want justice. So we can see how our Indian tales, our ancient tales, were very complex. As Amish was saying, they're very nuanced. And it would be wrong to take one kind of, a one-sided interpretation that that plays up one character but downplays everybody else. And I've tried in all of my books to show the different sides of different characters. The same with Palace of Illusions. Draupadi is the center of the story, but I hope I've been able to show even like people on the Kaurava side, what were they thinking and why did they do what they did? And even someone like Duryodhan has a lot of courage. He has a lot of nobility. So, that is the greatness of our Indian culture. It's not black and white. It's not heroes and villains. It's like great people and great women, especially, who are involved in this kind of complicated dance of, dance of life, as it were. So I'm certainly, it makes me very happy that so many people in India now who are readers are able to see and appreciate this. And I'm very excited because now a number of my books have been translated into the Indian languages. And that makes me very, very happy because I want these books to reach not just the English speakers, but all readers as far as possible in India, because I think there's something they can all resonate.
Right. Amish, I wanted to also...
if I can...
Yeah, sure.
Kaveri, if I can just add one more thing, like Sita, warrior of Mithila, I wrote of her as a warrior.
Yeah.
You won't believe how many emails and tweets and these things I've got from the Mithila region.
Right.
Saying that they love it. Yeah, so Indians are willing to listen to a different point of view, but we should speak it with respect. That's all.
Right. Amish, the other point that has struck me of late is, when you look at all the modern myths that we see on, on screen, especially from the West, the Marvel Universe or the DC Comics, even the new Godzilla versus King Kong, the Monsterverse. I think the world is ready for our own superheroes now. Why are we not telling these very same stories which you and Chitra have written? Why are we not able to see them on screen the way we see, say a Bahubali? We did do Bahubali. But, when I speak to filmmakers and actors, they tell me that I spoke to Ashutosh Gowarikar recently because I thought, Lagan, Swades, he's a man who knows what epics are all about. He said it'll take me at least 3 to 5 years just to read everything on the Mahabharata. Then only can I begin. Or Amir, for instance, Amir Khan has been talking about, a series on Mahabharata for the longest time. He's put down 18 books that he has to read even before he begins contemplating this. So, is there, when do you think we'll see something so spectacular, which I feel is something that we can do? We have so many of these heroes. Just from Mahabharata, for instance, we can do at least, I know how many series. When is that going to happen, Amish?
I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
I agree with you that the market is there.
Yeah.
If you
And a
see the
global
Marvel,
Yeah.
if you see the Marvel universe, I genuinely believe that many of the Westerners have actually turned pagan.
Yeah.
They just don't know it yet, right? The way, because actually the pagan approach, Hindus, or rather India, were the last surviving pagans. Most of them were wiped out, or most of them violently. But among the core of the pagan approach is, an acceptance of multiple truths,
Yeah.
shades of gray, no simplistic black and whites, various respect for women. This is like the traditional markers of the pagan approach. If you see the Marvel universe, you see they're popular. This thing. I mean, Captain America can be called the equivalent of Apollo
Yeah.
in the character and approach. Iron Man was the equivalent of Dionysus, and their interplay, it actually kind of echoes Greco-Roman, myths. Thor is Thor of,
Exactly.
Right.
so I think the market is there, but look, I'll tell you how it works. Because I've turned producer also with my latest book, Suhildev, I'm producing it.
Yeah.
How it works in the movies and series space, anything on Rama and Mahabharata, or the traditional myths, is the budgets are massive.
Massive.
Okay. So it would be Bahubali times, 3 or 4. The risks are extremely high. Okay. And how it works in this space is you need a core market to justify the core budget. Then the profits you make on international markets, because you can't be sure international banega ki nahi banega. If you try to make a crossover film, you fall neither here nor there. So one of the things is to go with that crouching tiger, hidden dragon approach, which is be true to who you are, service your own market, and if it crosses over, great, right? So the Indian market has to be big enough to justify the budgets of something like this. Any movie like this, you're talking about, maybe perhaps 400 crores per movie, and you will need at least 3 movies or 4 movies. That's a whole lot of money. That much money has never been invested in movies in India, even in a series, to be justified only by the Indian market, right? But it's a matter of time. It's a few years, because look, we don't have a shortage of population. Economic growth is happening. The kind of budgets we had, a 10 crore film was a massive budget, 15, 20 years ago. Today, easily you can make 100, 150 crores. So it's a matter of time. We will reach the place where India itself will justify these budgets. Then these things will get made a lot more. It's a matter of time, few years, maybe 5, 6 years.
Right. We already have things like Ashwatthama being made and Hiranyakashipu. Very interesting.
But remember, those are single movies. You can take a bet on a single movie.
Yeah.
But if you're committing to the story of Lord Shiva or Ramayana or Mahabharata, you're committing to 3, 4, 5 movies at least. That is too much commitment, to be fair. Budgets are just too much. The risk is just too high to be justified only by the Indian market.
Right. Chitra, there's been so much talk about the adaptation of Forest of Enchantments and Palace of Illusions. Palace of Illusions more, I think. Draupadi excites a lot more interest, I think, because she's so much more complex, at least to me and to a lot of other people.
She's very feisty, right?
Yeah.
She's very feisty. Mother Sita is feisty enough. I hope I've shown that in Forest of Enchantments.
Yeah. But what has your experience been with the idea of adaptation?
Well, Palace of Illusions is now optioned.
Right.
So, and it was optioned just before COVID hit. So everything was put on the shelf for now. But now, as hopefully we are getting out of the pandemic, I
Right.
hope that they're going to move forward. They have, I'm not allowed to divulge, but they have got some good, wonderful actors in place,
Okay.
including someone to play Draupadi. So,
Wow.
fingers crossed. We will see what happens. The Last Queen has also been optioned, so I'm very excited
Lovely.
about that as well.
Yeah.
Because what I was listening in fascination to Amish because he knows so much. Amish, how do you know all this stuff? But it's great listening to him.
Yeah.
And because I think he's right. And whenever Amish is saying this, whatever he's saying today, I'm like nodding, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
Because I do think that we have the most amazing
Absolutely.
heroes and heroines. The world literally absolutely needs to know about them. And of course, our own people, I think, will be there's a great love for mythology, which makes me so happy that in India, there is a great love for our own mythology and our history, and our readers show that. So I think that that is a big way to go.
Right.
That should be, those films should be really focused on and given the budget, the interest, the loving care that really makes people realize or reminds people. A visual reminder is always powerful. I think book reminders are also very powerful of our great history, our great culture. There's just a lot to be proud of, to learn from, and to bring into our everyday lives.
Right.
And that's really one of my major projects, is to inspire people with tales from our past,
Right.
our ever-living past.
Exactly. Chitra, I wanted to ask you, when you were researching Rani Jinda, for instance, what were the when you looked at the available resources, the available research on her, were there any filters that you had to sort of apply in your mind that this could possibly have this bias, that could have that bias? So when you're researching it, a subject, do you have that sense that you have to sort of peel a layer before you get to the bottom?
Oh, yes. And especially in the case of Rani Jinda, because so many of the sources were British.
Right.
There was a lot of peeling, unpeeling that I had to do. Because, they came from the point of view of, oh my goodness, this woman is big trouble.
Right.
How can we tell her story in a way that minimizes her, that takes away her glory, that throws not only a light of suspicion on her, but creates maybe some hatred and some disgust of her character. So, they just put out so many untrue stories about her having multiple lovers, even when Maharaja Ranjit Singh was alive, that even Maharaja Dalip Singh is not Maharaja Ranjit Singh's son because she was this, this profligate woman. I mean, and when you really begin to, so I had to do a lot of judging and evaluating of the sources.
Right.
You know how they say, consider the source, and I really had to do that. And, one of the things is Maharaja Ranjit Singh was an amazing, a very perceptive man. Yeah. He was not going to be fooled by something. If he says, Dalip Singh is my son, and he acknowledges him in open court, that is a fact to be taken much more seriously than what the British wrote and passed out all around India, especially all around Punjab. Or when Lady Logan, who becomes, Lord and Lady Logan become Dalip Singh's guardians. Yes, they become his guardians when he's torn away from his mother. She's put in prison, and then he's given to Lord and Lady Logan. So when she is writing about Maharani Jinda, she already has a lot of biases and perhaps some guilt. And so I had to read through those things to really look at what were the facts of the matter.
Right. And there are some scenes that are so moving, Chitra, when, without giving too much away, when, Dilip Singh hands the Kohinoor back to, Queen Victoria. There's some scenes which you recreated, which really, make you feel that you're right there when it's happening. And yet you feel so sad about so much of our history being just so, badly written for us, what do you have to say
Yeah.
to historians? I mean, what have they been doing all this time?
Well, I think Amish put it very well. They were continuing in some kind of strange, I don't know, colonial tradition. And instead of really doing what I was talking about, which is just taking the facts, considering the source, removing the biases, and looking at what actually happened, right? Because in the case of Maharaja Dalip Singh, it is a clear and so heartbreaking example of cultural colonialization, right? Where not only is he deprived of his kingdom illegally, because Punjab is at that time a protectorate. The British should be protecting it, not taking it away from a minor. But having taken his kingdom away from him, having taken the Kohinoor away from him, they create in his mind a sense of inferiority, of not only not having pride in his culture, but actually being ashamed of the Indian part of him, the Punjabi part of him. They make him forget his entire history. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't remember anything about his father and the grandeur of his father's empire, which was his own kingdom also. And he's made to look up at Queen Victoria, and he just worships Queen Victoria because she's kind to him, and she invites him over to his house where he plays with her children, carrying them on his back. When I read those things in the sources, it just broke my heart. And then I thought, how would his mother have felt, who all her life, she just fought and fought against the British in every way she knew. When she comes to England and she sees this attitude in her son, and he's called like Victoria's Black Prince, which is, so, I don't know, so derogatory.
You don't even know what to call it. It's beyond racism,
Yes, right? So how would she have felt? So that becomes part of my novel, The Last Queen. And how, out of that terrible situation, is she going to find a victory? I think that is the most amazing thing about Maharani Jinda, how at the end of her life, she will have a moral victory over the British.
Right. And even the way she was cremated, I mean, it took him a whole year to bring her back, and then he couldn't even go back to Punjab.
That's right. And, that shows again
the cruelty of the British Empire. And you think, all this while we have been taught to believe that they were very civilized and, they always observed the rule of law. They did not.
They did not. Absolutely. Whenever it was not convenient for them, and whenever the law was not in their favor, they happily went away from it. And I don't know, perhaps this is the case of conquerors in many places, but it was certainly true of colonial rule. And you are right. It is very sad that even after she dies, and the last thing she says is to him, one of the last things she says is, please don't leave my body here. I cannot rest in the country of my enemy. Take me back to the country that I love. But even and it takes him, like you said, over a year. And even when he does manage to take her there, they're like, you can't go to Punjab. And she had said, please put my ashes with my husband's ashes, because, he was the great love of her life. And they wouldn't let Maharaja Dalip Singh do it. It's only much later when her granddaughter, and that's not in this novel, but her granddaughter, Sophia, is going to go and manage to do that.
That's another lovely story.
Yes.
That's a novel by itself. Yes, Amish.
Yeah. No, if I can just add something in terms of historians to what Chitra said, how our own historians have been, I so agree with her, are mentally colonized, our establishment historians who've written our history for the last 70 years. The way the British Raj has been presented. I genuinely believe the British Raj was essentially the Nazis with better PR. That's who they were. That doesn't mean that we have to hate. That doesn't mean that we have to hate today's British
Right.
for what the British Raj did. That's ridiculous. Today's British haven't done anything. We can be allies with them, but we must speak the truth of what the British Raj was. It wasn't this, land of fair play and law. No, the British Raj was built on the biggest drug running racket in the history of humanity.
Right.
A Bengali author had said very rightly, Queen Victoria was essentially Dawood Ibrahim with better headdress. Okay, that's what the empire was built on, right? They killed, the British Raj killed, estimates vary, but at least between 30 to 60 million Indians in man-made famines that they created. The Economist magazine, the venerable Economist magazine today, you should read there, and they're available online now. Over 100 years ago, when the famine was taking place in the Deccan, the Economist magazine had justified those famines. Said the British Raj cannot be responsible for the indolent Indians, right, who breed too much and deserve to die. The Economist magazine, right? After the 1857 revolt, what is called the Thuggi, suppression, they killed at least between 5 to 10 million Purabiyas essentially, because the rebellion was led by Eastern UPites, Biharis, the core of it. Eastern UPites, Biharis, and Bengalis, the troops, and they massacred millions of them. That's how India was settled, right? Over 10, 15, 20 years. They were Nazis with better PR, right? And we must speak the truth of it. That does not mean that we should hate the British today. I am not suggesting, community vengeance, historical vengeance. Those are very dangerous concepts. But we must speak the truth. And it is an indictment of our establishment historians of the last 70 years that they haven't brought out these truths, that they actually believe that the British Raj was good for us.
Right.
Yeah, nonsense.
Right. So, Amish, I mean, writers like you and Chitra are doing their part, but what do we need to change? Because we keep hearing of the new education policy, but it never quite, the textbooks are just tinkered with and, they go back to being what they were. How do we create this culture of revising our history without, as you said, necessarily saying that, all our invaders were evil and therefore their descendants are so, which is a ridiculous concept. But we still have to go back and look at our history.
To speak the truth.
Yeah, exactly. How do we do
it must
that?
Be done
that
by,
culture?
it must be done by unbiased scholars who approach it with a sense of calm historical perspective, not seeking to justify it, not seeking to create hatred either. Just speak it for what it is. And yes, the British Raj as a whole was horrible, but every British viceroy, every British ruler out here was a monster like Hitler. No, that's not true. Winston Churchill was monstrous, no doubt. Robert Clive was monstrous, no doubt. But Bentinck wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? We must speak that. Aurangzeb was monstrous, no doubt, but Akbar wasn't. Akbar was relatively decent. Alauddin Khilji was monstrous. Mahmud Ghazni was monstrous, no doubt. But Razia Sultan wasn't. Right? So we must speak calmly of our history. And I think one of the best things to do would be to simply translate the texts that they themselves wrote. So, and if you want to know Aurangzeb, just translate the Alamgiri. Right? He himself says he's so proud to, massacre so many people, destroy so many temples. I mean, it's his own words, right? Or make popular the works of Robert Clive or Winston Churchill, who himself justified the Bengal famine, which he ordered, right? Where millions of people were killed.
Right.
Just make those available. Those texts are there. Texts from our own ancestors are also there. But realize once again that this should not preach hatred today. What the British Raj did has nothing to do with the British today. And the Turkic invaders very obviously have nothing to do with Muslims today. Muslims today are Indians. They're not descendants of... The Turks were foreigners. Despite what our Bollywood movies tell us, Akbar did not look like Prithviraj Kapoor. Razia Sultan did not look like Hema Malini. Alauddin Khilji did not look like Ranveer Singh. They were foreigners. To us, they would have looked Chinese.
Right.
They did not speak Urdu. Urdu is an Indian language. Urdu is our language. They did not speak Urdu. They spoke Turkic or Persian. We wouldn't have understood anything of what they were saying. So we need to just bring out the truth. That is all. Realize that they were foreigners. Many of them were truly monstrous. Some of them were actually decent. And speak the truth of what happened and realize that we are free now. See the past for what it was, see it with truth, and then move on. Let the truth set us free.
Right. Absolutely. Chitra, I think
Yeah. I wanted to add,
Yeah.
I wanted to add a little bit. I agree with Amish. And I think also it's important to really look at our history and look at the really inspiring people.
Yeah.
And because if we can, and to show, as Amish was saying, that they come from different communities, they belonged to different religions, they came at different times, there were men and women, and that we really do need to see what were their great achievements, because as Amish was saying, the 1857, which I would call the first war of independence, which the British gave terrible names to, including when I went to school, the books call it the Sipai Mutiny.
Yeah.
What? It was their war of independence, right? It was our first. And the way the British treated those vanquished soldiers, they shot them out of cannons.
Yeah.
They were like massacred in terrible, terrible, painful ways. We need to remember those things, because another important historical saying that I believe in is those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And if we don't learn the lessons of history, and Maharani Jinda's life, which I hope I've shown in The Last Queen, has a very important lesson for us. Why did the kingdom of Punjab, which was so strong, which really had such a great army, why did it fall?
Yeah.
It was because of inside treachery. People couldn't come together. Why is it that the British could go to kingdom after kingdom after kingdom, and each one of them falling? Only Maharaja Ranjit Singh sees it, and he tells Maharani Jinda, he says that, they turn people against each other. In each country, in each little kingdom, they have, or not little kingdom, big kingdoms, they have been able to turn people into traitors, infighting. And because the kingdoms could not come together, the British were able to, one by one, just conquer them, right? Using whatever underhand methods. So I think there's a great lesson there for India and for the US, which is that we have to come together. We have to forget our differences and come together as a country, come together as a nation. That is the great lesson of history. Otherwise, we become weakened and outside forces can take advantage of that.
Absolutely. And what is the one lesson that Jinda's life sort of teaches you?
The great lesson that I learned from her is she never gives up.
Right.
If she believes in something, she's going to follow it. And she never gives up, no matter how difficult things are. And I think we can all learn something from that, right? Sometimes it will seem like all of the forces of the world are against us. But if we believe in what we're doing, I think Maharani Jinda teaches us, we keep going. And if we can't win in one way, if we can't win outwardly, we can still win the moral victory, which she does.
Right. Any last thoughts, Chitra and Amish, before we go to what has been a fascinating conversation?
I think I want to end by saying that I am always so happy that people are enjoying these stories,
Yes.
these timeless stories. I think that I have to say I respect the audience of India, the readers of India so much, because they take these stories to their heart. I get so many letters, and I'm sure Amish gets even more, saying that I read this, I learned something about my culture that I didn't know,
Right.
and it's now become a living part of me. I've learned so much from these characters.
Right.
They have become my friends. They have become my inspiration. So that makes me so, so thankful and happy that, we have such a great reading public. And I hope that for them, there will be more and more stories of our past, which lives on, in our books and in our hearts. So we've got to make these stories available to people.
What are you working on next, Chitra?
Well, I'm really on a historical streak. So I'm working on a novel that's based right around independence and partition. And it will be set in Bengal because that's particularly my part of the country. And when Amish was talking about the Bengal famine, it really struck me because I've just finished doing the research on the Bengal famine of like 1942, 43. And it was totally created by the British. So terrible. I was looking at the old photographs and I was literally sitting there crying, thinking, this was done to us by the British. And nobody took them to task over it, right? Nobody said to them, what is this terrible thing you have done?
And our historians have airbrushed this out of history. And we are all reasonably well read. First time I discovered of the Bengal famine is when I went to study in Calcutta. I didn't know about it before. Seriously, shame on our historians. Over 3 million Indians were, and it was a famine ordered by Winston Churchill. You should read Madhushri Banerjee's book, Chitra, you'll love it. And seriously, what are our historians doing? I mean, what have they been doing rather for the last 70 years?
Amish, what are you working on next? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm working on the 4th book of the Ramchandra series.
Yeah.
That's even when I do the first thing my readers ask me, if I post a tweet that I'm going on holiday, I'm cycling, there'll be someone saying, why are you wasting time? Go finish that book. So that will be out this year. It'll be out by the end of this year. Okay. And there's also a non-fiction book. We released Dharma, which is explaining the core concepts of Dharma. My sister Bhavna Didi and I, we wrote it. So we have a follow-up coming up to that on the beauty of idol worshipping.
Oh.
So that we're also hoping to release this year.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful talking to both of you, and more power to your pen, more power to your storytelling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaveri. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and Amish, always great to be on the screen together.
Always a pleasure to chat with Chitra, Kaveri, and thank you so much. As always, you hosted it beautifully.
Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com, or even edxlive.com. If you are more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for watching. This is the age of social media and the virtual society helping shape the world. We have Facebook India's Managing Director, Ajit Mohan, with us today. He will be discussing the role of new tech and online communities in transforming India. Senior journalist Kaveri Bamzai will join the conversation as well.
Shall we get started on the whole idea of digital dividend and what Facebook has been talking about of late, of leave no one behind, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goal, and which is, of course, Mahatma Gandhi's idea. And it's nice to see the world adopting, India's ideas, even if it's a bit late. So tell me what it means for Facebook and all your applications.
Sure. Great to be here, Kaveri. Thank you for having me. I think it's important to note, Kaveri, that something big happened in India in the last 5 to 6 years. A very large part of the country came alive in terms of accessing the internet in a very short period of time. right? I think between late 2015 and the end of 2020, we had close to 600 million people who came online with access to affordable internet on the mobile.
These were
That kind of
600 million new people, additional people.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at some of the numbers
Right.
that are reported from Tribe, but largely when you look at the number of people who have access to 4G, and most of the action is on mobile 4G, almost all of that is in the last 5 years.
Right.
So whether that's 550, 600, or 650, that's the range, and that kind of a transformation, both the scale and the pace, hasn't happened anywhere else in the world. Not even in China. When you look at the period in which it happened, right? A lot of it happened in 3 years. So as we think to the future, as we look ahead to the future, I think it's to recognize that everything that is going to come, and you framed it as digital dividend, but fundamentally, all the goodness that will come out of a large part of the country being already connected to the internet, starting to have exposure to digital tools that can have a dramatic impact on their own lives, in the lives of their communities and the world around them. And by the way, more and more people coming online, right? This number is not static.
Yeah.
Every year we are adding tens of millions of people. That context does mean that we are set for an explosion in the emergence of new models, dramatic shift in behavior, and all of that translates fundamentally to how can people leverage this access to the internet and access to new tools to fundamentally reshape their environments, and call it whatever the label is. I think it's an explosive opportunity for India and for all of us.
Right. So how does Facebook intend to help India become Atmanirbhar, to, exploit these opportunities for business, for social growth? How does Facebook intend to do that with, not just Facebook, but Instagram, WhatsApp?
Yeah.
How do you intend to do that?
Yeah, I think if you look at that context of what's happening in India, and if you look at the Facebook family of apps, right? Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, the one thing that immediately stands out, Kaveri, is how immersed in the fabric of India we are. Whether it's in the public spaces like Facebook and Instagram, or the private messaging space that is WhatsApp, each one of these apps clearly plays a big role in our daily lives. I'm sure it's true for you. It's true for me, and for a lot of people who are listening to this today. Most of your daily life starts on WhatsApp. It's probably the last thing that you do before you go to bed. There are today creators and businesses who are born on Instagram, and friends and families connect with each other on Facebook. So the starting point of the answer to your question in terms of how do we contribute to aiding this transformation and to making sure that India can actually reap the digital dividend, it's so clearly visible in front of us. It starts with the nature of these platforms and how engaged people around the country are with these apps. So that's the starting point. Once you recognize that, then we think about it in terms of, are we essentially fueling our core mission of helping people not just connect with each other, but finding ways to introduce new tools that allow them to radically transform their lives. And that comes in many forms, Kaveri. One, of course, is connectedness, right? Just making it easier for people to remain connected with each other. That's not just people around your local community or in India, but around the world. And a lot of that came alive in the last 12 months, right?
Yeah.
I think we had a radical experiment. It's not fair to call it an experiment because
The whole world was a guinea pig.
Yeah, it was a crisis. There was a health crisis. There was a lot of loss, but it also was essentially a period in which a lot of new tools came in that allowed people to engage with each other, to remain connected with each other without being in the same room. And that's, that mission is true even when the world comes back to normal. But I think we played a particular role over the last few months. But it's important for us in terms of making sure that we are making it easier and easier for people who have a shared mission, who love each other, to have that connectedness that crosses physical constraints, right? Not being in the same space. I think the second way in which we can really do this is in terms of enabling the agenda of entrepreneurship and the creation of businesses. Uh, the interesting part in terms of how the world looks now is it's become, Kaveri, really, really easy to go from you have an idea to build a new business, build a product, build a service, to uh, taking it to all of the world, right? Historically, if you look at it, there's a pattern to it, right? You set up a small shop, you invariably try to get traction in your local town. If it's working really well, you expand to the state. And if it does extraordinarily well, you kind of go national. And very few companies go global.
Right.
That's changed. I think what we are seeing, and that's for me the explosive opportunity for a country like ours, which is young, aspirational, deeply entrepreneurial, is that the whole mechanism of going from an idea to going global has gotten compressed. And we see that there are businesses who are, in month 2, in month 6, deciding to explore global markets. And the nature of our platforms means that it's very easy for them to find customers for their product and services anywhere in the world with very little friction, very little cost. So that's the other role, right? The agenda of fueling entrepreneurship, not just in a local context or in a national context, but really in a global context. And the third one really is, how do we, for a company like ours that's global, where our core mission is to empower people and provide them access to digital tools, how do we play an enabling role in fueling the agenda of inclusion, right? Making sure that more and more people can not just access the internet, but also leverage everything that good that comes with accessing the internet, with a particular focus on women. The reality is there's a huge gender imbalance. It's true globally, but it's true in India as well. 65% of access to the internet is still men, right? And like in all thoughtful economic theories, the reality is that big change happens when women have access to equitable opportunity, and that is true when it comes to realizing the value of the internet. So a lot of our programs are focused on making sure that women find it safe. There's a lot of friction in terms of concerns around, once they're online, are they safe? So that's sort of the first level, right? Making sure that there is safety for the presence of the internet, making sure that we have programs that are focused on particularly fueling female entrepreneurship, and working with other partners to make sure that we are setting a virtuous cycle where more and more groups that are excluded or have not yet benefited from accessing the internet, we essentially think through how we can break that imbalance.
Ajit, that's all very well, but at the end of the day, you still need capital to make these businesses work. And we are in a country where currently there's a huge economic recession, and we all know that there's not enough spending power. So how does one overcome that? While in theory these are wonderful ideas, and of course virtually you can scale up to a certain extent, you cannot go further if you don't have capital investment. So, what do you do with your partners, with governments, to ensure that people actually have access to the tools you need in the real world as well to scale up businesses?
Yeah, I think Kaveri, there are so many questions in there. So let me kind of break it down and address all of the different parts of it. First, Kaveri, it's not theoretical, right? When we have more than 600 million people who have come online in India in a very short period of time, it has happened on the back of capital, a lot of which was deployed by the telcos, but tech companies, others. So this is all very real, right? This change is a big part of the change has already happened.
Right.
I think uh, when
There
you
is
when you look at,
access, but not necessarily equity. That's what we want eventually.
I think in 2015, Kaveri, less than 50 million people had access to affordable internet. Today, the number is north of 600. So
Right.
the equity equation has dramatically changed already. So, given that I raised the point of equity, Kaveri, it's not to say that that agenda is complete
Yeah.
or it's finished, but I think it's important to recognize the successes that have already come, because in that is inbuilt learnings of what we can continue to do better. What are the learnings? One, um, yeah, some of the hard work is already done, because when you have that foundational layer of a lot of people have access to the internet, and a clear shift in behavior from offline to online, including in commerce, including in categories like video, music, education, healthcare, it creates a virtuous cycle that attracts more capital. I think that's the story that we have seen in the last few years. I think any number you look at it, whether it is the investment from the private equity space, the scale of FDI that's coming in, it's all benefited from the fact that that flywheel is well in place. So the fact that people having access, companies disrupting and making big, bold bets, trying out new models, trying out new ideas, many of which are working and scaling up, that in turn fuels the cycle of entrepreneurship, because it attracts the next generation of entrepreneurs to be bold and fuel ideas, not just for India, but for the world, which attracts more capital. I think we are in the middle of that. So, and through all of it, what we are seeing is that it's not just that capital is coming into India, and a lot of them doing well. It's also that all of this essentially builds the momentum for more and more people having access to the internet. It reduces the cost of access, right? It reduces the portfolio of services that are open, that in itself become a momentum driver. And a company like ours, I think if I look back at the last few years, of course, you saw us make an investment in geo platforms. Um, uh, One of the reasons why we did it was we saw a company that probably more than any other company in India had done a big needle moving change in terms of expanding access to the internet, which is one of the reasons why we were excited to partner with them. A lot of the work that we do every day, Kaveri, is focused on how do we make sure that the kind of tools that are available for very large businesses, and traditionally, when you look at the media landscape, large businesses have always had an advantage in terms of accessing knowledge and insights and tools that have enabled them to fuel growth more than small businesses.
Right.
What's unique about our model is for any company to use Facebook or Instagram to reach new consumers around the world, the smallest business, the entrepreneurial shop with only 2 employees, has access to the same tools that our largest clients have. And a lot of our energy is focused on making sure not just that those tools are available and companies can come in and use them, but we spend a lot of energy and time and investment in making sure that we take those tools to entrepreneurs and to smaller businesses. A program that we have rolled out in India is called the SMB Guide, which is available in English and Hindi and over time in multiple languages. The idea is, how do you create awareness about the power of the internet, and then using platforms like ours to grow businesses, to the smallest entrepreneur in the smallest town. And so that's effort. One of the things we have done in the last year, especially given the pandemic and the massive disruption it caused in economies around the world, was we provided financial support. Right, we wrote grants for around 3,000 businesses amounting to 32 crores, and again, it's material money, but given the size of India's economy, it's not that large. But the idea was to show up and be helpful wherever we can. And in this case was, let's be helpful to some of those businesses who have been impacted by just giving them a bit of financial support that can help them tide over the disruption that happened when people were not walking into shops on the streets. So I think all of these, Kaveri, go together, right? All of these go together. And we see ourselves as playing a meaningful role in helping build these foundational blocks, these bricks of the India internet that we are building together, which is a part of the global internet. And we see that as an exciting part of our mission.
Let's talk about some of the new tools that you've launched and how do they help small businesses, whether it's Facebook Room or Insta Reels. Do these in any way help the small business?
Yeah, I think, again, at multiple levels.
Yeah.
Answer is yes. I think two or three things are happening, Kaveri. One is, of course, there's a big shift happening in terms of behaviors, right? And one of that, to the top of this conversation, is people around the world are getting more and more comfortable with the idea of virtual presence, right? I mean, you and I are doing this over a video call. We're doing it with ease. 2 years ago, we would probably have made an effort to fly into a city and be on a stage together. And yet,
Thank God we don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly. And the quality of this conversation is probably as good as it would have been. Neither of us is exhausted. So maybe the quality of the conversation is even better. But I think it's part of a trend where there is comfort with virtual presence. And a lot of our work is on building tools to fuel that. Live rooms is an example of that. Video calling on WhatsApp is an example of that. So that's an element. And of course, the reality is that in many of these cases, the boundaries between consumer behavior and business behavior is very porous, right?
Yeah.
Businesses will use WhatsApp video calls, just like we may be using WhatsApp video calls for family calls.
Yeah,
that's one. I think the second part of it is that we put in a lot of energy to make sure that we are investing in skilling. We have a program called Boost with Facebook, which again used to be a physical event, which is now done online, where the idea is essentially to create awareness amongst a large number of people who are being introduced into the world of the internet for the first time, how to use digital tools, right? And if I stretch that further, we actually have a program with the CSC Academy, which is a part of the IT ministry, where we've already trained 250,000 women in more than 25,000 villages in 12 states across the country, in terms of fueling sort of what we call village level entrepreneurs, right? Which are really, how do we make sure that female entrepreneurs in villages understand the power of the internet to fuel business ideas that they have, to grow their businesses. So a lot of the work is around skilling. And then the third bucket is the entire platform on Facebook and Instagram is really geared towards making it easy for businesses to establish a presence and then leverage the scale of the platform and the global presence of the platform to find new customers for their products and services. And it's, we invest, the point that I was making earlier, Kaveri, every tool is as accessible for a small business as it is for a very large client. And therefore, we invest a lot of time in building those products, but then especially in India, we're investing a lot of effort and energy in taking those to as wide a community as possible. So the SMB guide is an example. We work with VC and PE firms to help them with their startups. Um, so that's the idea. Can we make sure that we can, given that these tools exist, given that when companies or entrepreneurs use these tools, they find that there is enormous potential to scale their businesses. How do we make sure that the knowledge and wisdom around that is dissipated to as many individuals and entrepreneurs and companies as possible? And that's a lot of the effort that we do every day.
Right. So how do you do that? Do you use your own platform, or do you use other platforms to do that as well?
I think it's whatever clients want, right? So there's no constraint in terms of only using our platform. So one, a lot of webinars, right, in the last few months, which are open and free. Boost with Facebook is a particular structured program, as I mentioned, which was physical, now done online. The creation of guides like the SMB guide for India and an online resource hub that we have created. Um, and of course, I think just making sure that we are open to conversations. A lot of people write into us, seek help, and when they do that, we try and connect them to people who can actually help them. So I don't think there is any constraint in terms of the mechanism of employing these tools, right? I think of course, given Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, the reality is like most other companies and businesses find it easy and useful to users. We find it useful to users for our own purposes as well. And no surprise, a lot of times it happens to be the easiest and the least friction way to get to large numbers of people. But there's no constraint, right? I think it's whatever works for the other side.
The other two areas where I think we saw a lot of change during the pandemic in the use of all your apps is, of course, education and healthcare. Education in particular, and the opportunities there for India in terms of online learning, in terms of online teaching are tremendous, as it is for healthcare. So are there any things in particular that you're doing in those two areas?
I think the answer to your sort of first question is absolutely. I think your sort of thesis that these are two sectors that are likely to see massive positive transformational change.
I believe
where models come out of India that in many ways solve for the world. We believe that too. I think there's a lot of excitement there. As you know, we kind of made a small investment in a company called An Academy that is at the forefront of innovation and live classes, for example. So we are big believers that India in many ways will throw out new models that will be relevant for the world. And we're also believers that we can play an enabling role, Kaveri. Just to give you an example, a company called White Hat Junior.
Yeah.
And I think it's a company that amplifies a lot of what I've been talking about, which is, in less than 18 months, they went from zero to a company that was valued at $300 million and bought by Jews. And a lot of their market expansion it was on Facebook and Instagram. I think Karan, the founder, would say that. They started targeting the United States almost at the same time as they started exploring expansion in India. And that kind of gives you a sense of the potential in sectors like education, right? And I want to call out two or three things for those in the audience who are thinking about this. One, the fact that there are some opportunities where we have depth in expertise, right? In this case, for example, we have massive depth in high quality teachers around the country, right? Whether it's to teach coding or mathematics or English. And in many ways, this is a model where you can find a way to connect the dots between supply, which is essentially great quality teachers who have the ability to create the right learning environments,
Right.
to demand, which is global.
Yeah.
Right. The need to learn something new. Um, it's an unlimited demand globally. And the role of a platform like ours, Kaveri, is you're able to connect the dots between the teachers and a teacher sitting in Coimbatore and a student sitting in Cincinnati can easily happen today. And the companies who are building these models find it easy that they can leverage Facebook and Instagram to figure out who are the right set of parents who are going to be interested. What is the right pricing for it? That is the big opportunity. The fact that it's become easy to access global markets with very little friction, with the economics that are in line with consumers' ability to pay, and for me, what the exciting part of the story is, it taps into India's strengths.
Absolutely.
Right? If we have unlimited human capital, what better role can we play as a company other than to connect that unlimited human capital to a world that will benefit from that capital? So it just gives you the framing in which, again, to the top of the conversation about digital dividend, the framing in which a global platform like ours can play an enabling role in creating entirely new economic virtuous cycles that are good for the world and good for us, good for the country.
What about health? Do we have any examples, as you said, of White Hat Junior or Yoon Academy in health? We've seen a lot of the Anganwadi workers in India, for instance, use tools such as yours to actually become the front line in terms of COVID workers, to help in mental health counseling. A lot of that has happened as well. And some people are talking about exporting that model of community workers as well, aided by technology, for the rest of the world. Do you look at something like that happening as well, which is a very particular Indian model?
Look, I think a great call out, Kaveri, and obviously, I think the biggest part of the health agenda over the last 12 months has been to make sure that people have access to accurate information on COVID.
Yes.
Right.
And mental health. That's the other silent epidemic.
Of course. And right off the bat, I think going back to March or April of last year, one of the work that we had done with multiple state governments and the central government was to create WhatsApp chatbots as well as Messenger, Facebook Messenger chatbots, to make sure that people had accurate information to COVID-related health information. Today, around the world and in India, we're trying to make sure that people have accurate information on vaccines, right? Including making sure that we play a role in limiting vaccine hesitancy. I think it's an important agenda for the globe and for India. So that's been where a lot of our energy is focused. But clearly, anecdotally, we see that obviously there's a lot of, I think the comfort with video calling for doctors has gone up dramatically, right, in the last few months. I think, and I think there are enough models out there, entrepreneurial startups that have created ventures where they're making it easier to get an appointment with the doctor, do a video call, the prescription is within the app. I think some of that innovation will continue. And again, I think the role that we can play is in terms of making sure that we are building tools that allow some of these innovation that may be driven by other companies to leverage the scale that we have, right? And make it easy and reduce the friction as much as possible.
So Ajit, those are the good parts, and those are the wonderful things about technology, and it makes you so inspired to just hear you talking about all this, because you know that these are opportunities. There are, of course, worries about the dark side as well, in terms of privacy, in terms of the machine knowing you better than you know yourself, in terms of the number of parameters per person that Facebook may have. So a lot of concerns about that. How do you address those, especially in such a politically volatile country such as India?
No, I wouldn't characterize India that way, Kaveri. I think the reality is the countries around the world, I mean, in the context of this conversation, the countries around the world are all asking questions around what does it mean on the internet in terms of the rules around privacy, data usage, content. I think that conversation is global, Kaveri, and two or three things to call out here. One, if I look back at the history of the internet over the last 25 years, just like with any new technology, any disruption in innovation, Kaveri, the first few years are invariably characterized by explosive innovation where societies kind of just understand all of the positive benefits, right? And a lot of big needle moving change happens in a very short period of time. And then invariably, as it happens, the conversation slowly shifts to, okay, this is great, but what about X and what about Y? Like the questions that you're asking. And I think we've reached that stage almost of that, that first stage of at least the current version of the internet between 95 and 2020, where there's increasingly a recognition that as much as it's a force for good, as much as the large number of people disproportionately are connected to the internet and are using the internet for good, right? They're trying to start a business. They're just trying to talk to their, family who's in a different town. There's as it happens with any new technology, as it happens with most things in the world, there will be a minority of actors who may be using it for purposes that are not right? Whether it is speech of a certain kind, hate speech of a certain kind, whether it is spreading content that societies can largely agree that should not be easily accessible. And our principle on all of this, Kaveri, is that we have very clear guidelines in terms of the kind of content that is not allowed on our platforms, right? And those are articulated and we are transparent about it, what we call community standards, right? And that covers a whole bunch of areas like hate speech, speech that calls for violence, speech against women, speech against other protected groups. And we're very clear that between the AI that constantly improves over time, where we are able to, today pick up some of these even before they are distributed, right? And limit them from ever coming onto our platforms and get distribution. And then, a very large number of people, 35,000 people who work on the safety and security agenda in the company, almost all of that which has happened in the last 3 years, we are very clear that it is our responsibility, just like it is the responsibility of other tech platforms, to make sure that we're investing in people and in technology to create a safe and secure environment for users around the world. So that's one part of it. And the second part is, as Mark himself has articulated quite vocally over the last couple of years, privacy is at the top of our agenda. And that fundamentally means, and again, we have seen a big shift in the company over the last 2-3 years. It means that we now today work with a privacy framework that influences the development of every product we make, every feature we change, every policy we create. At the heart of it is whether it meets the standards of privacy that the company has articulated. And making sure, a big part of that, Kaveri, is making sure that users have control over their data, that users are able to have the power to decide what data about them, what is it used, in what context it's used. So both of what you mentioned, the privacy agenda and the safety agenda, are huge priorities that rise to the top stack of priorities for the company globally.
Right. So, almost at the end of our conversation, Ajit, what are the 3 things during the pandemic that you learned, or the lessons that the company learned, which you think going forward will impact on how you function?
Yeah, I think one, we've talked a lot about it, Kaveri, that consumers and businesses have a lot more comfort with virtual presence than we would have ever imagined a year ago. And that's a big shift. And even as the world comes back and we'll all probably spend more time in rooms together, we do believe that virtual presence will be leveraged a lot more than we were doing in the past. And that's one of the reasons why we are investing materially in AR and VR. We see that as the next big computing platform for the next generation. I think the second one is that there's clearly a shift from offline to online.
Right.
Whether it's consumers and businesses, we are seeing that more and more of the time spent, more and more of what you sell, all of that is moving online, right? And that kind of, to the conversation that we had, it means that all of us need to make sure that we upskill and understand the shift and find ways to leverage it, because that's how the world is going to live. And lastly, I think this is an interesting one, is with all of the change, we will discover whether a new music or a new brand or a new category, the ways in which we discover new things is also going to change. And a lot of that is going to be online. It may be purposeful, it may be through serendipity, but if you look at how economics has been organized, and especially marketing and advertising, a lot of that assumes how people discover new things based on how we have lived for the last 100 years. And I think in the last 12 months, that changed. And I think everyone will have to gear towards the new ways in which people around the world will discover new things.
So, which is the one app that you use most, Ajit, of all the apps that your company has?
Between the three, it's actually all three, but I think it's still WhatsApp. I think just given the kind of connectedness we have all with families and friends on WhatsApp, quite a bit of Facebook, and increasingly in the last 6 months, a lot of Instagram as well.
Because you hear so much about younger people preferring Instagram to Facebook. Is that true in terms of numbers?
I think when we look at the numbers, what we're seeing is that young people are on both Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
Instagram probably skews a bit younger, but if you look at the growth, and some of these numbers have been made public, you will know that in a country that is as young as ours, these numbers happen only when young people are on both Facebook and Instagram. What is true, Kaveri, is Facebook is still a lot about connecting friends and families, but Instagram, because of its design, in terms of how it's built, it's definitely where people spend more time to pursue interests, discover brands, right? Followership around big passionate areas happens on Instagram a lot. Whereas friends and family, and the connectedness between friends and family is still the center, the heart of the center of gravity for Facebook app.
But what are people using more for business? I'm curious about that.
Both of them, right? I think, and it's a big one. And when a business comes and uses Facebook, it's today almost by default they get to leverage Instagram as well.
Okay.
So an ad on Facebook is actually also an ad on Instagram.
Right.
So it is so seamless that from a business point of view, it is wherever the consumers who have interest in that category or for their particular brand are engaging. But it's both fairly seamlessly.
So are you, at the end of the day, a media company, a business company, a social media company? What is Facebook? Or is the transnational giant which sort of controls our lives?
No, not a giant. I think, we don't spend a lot of time, Kaveri, giving ourselves a label, right, internally. I think a lot of our time is actually spent on saying, hey, we have this amazing generational opportunity to drive big change in the world, including in India. We have the ability to create new products and tools. Let's go out there and do it. And hopefully societies and people like you and people in general see the value, see that we can be a big force for good. That's where a lot of our energy is focused on, Kaveri.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic has really brought that home to a lot of people that, the internet is a force for good. And I think the conspiracy theories have sort of died down a little, but of course they will always be there. So at the end of the day, what's it like working for Mark Zuckerberg?
I think a lot of the, for a company where the founder is still the CEO,
Yeah,
no surprise, Kaveri, that a lot of the energy of the company, how we move fast, the innovation that you see across our family of apps, I think obviously benefit from the fact that we have a leader who's extremely clear about his mission and the mission of his company. And I think it shows up every day.
thank you so much, Ajit Mohan, for sharing your vision with us. It's very exciting, very inspiring. And I think young people, especially, have to learn more and more how to use it for good, and maybe not just as we think of it as a black hole of time, which sort of just consumes you and doesn't benefit you in any way. I think that's the one thing that we can take away from here, apart from many others. Thank you very much, Ajit Mohan, for spending this time with us.
Thank you, Kaveri.
Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com, or even edxlive.com. If you are more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for watching. Upskilling has grown to become a necessity in the past few years. 2020 made us realize the importance of updating our skills, including soft skills. Our next speaker is a veteran of the technology industry. She's the first woman to become the president of NASSCOM. Please welcome the fifth president of NASSCOM, Debjani Ghosh. She will talk about soft skills for the future. Senior journalist Kaveri Bamzai will join the conversation as well.
Today we're going to talk to her about soft skills in particular. I think that's been on top of our minds in the past few months, especially with the pandemic. We've all been wondering about our jobs. We've been wondering about our children. Our children have been wondering about their future. And at the top of our minds is really not just about education, but also the soft skills that we all seem to require in this new world. So, Debjani, I'd like to start off right away by, sort of plunging in at the deep end and asking you, what are the things that really you think we need to learn, especially engineers? There's a huge skill gap, as we all know, in what they learn and what the job market requires of them. How do we bridge that? And how can you help us learn how to do that?
So, Kaveri, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And that introduction completely threw me off. that that sort of made me think a bit. But lovely talking to you, and it's such an important question that you are asking, because traditionally we have just felt put the child into engineering college and
Right.
you're done with, right? Especially if it's a good engineering college, the child is going to come out with
Yeah.
5 job offers, if not more, and you are done. You're settled for life. What we are finding right now is no disrespect meant to any institutes, and I think all institutes are trying hard to keep up. But the fact is, Kavri, that technology is changing the pace at which we do things and how we do things faster than anything you and I are used to. We're
Right.
right now seeing the kind of change that we are seeing is what we call exponential change, where everything doubles every time it increases, right? And we as humans are totally not used to anything that changes so fast.
Right.
So for an education system that takes 15 plus years to churn out the final product, and where the curriculum is based on books that were written, if not maybe 10, 20, I think 100 years back,
Right.
it becomes definitely very, very difficult to create uh, uh, the skills that are right now needed by the industry. So there's this complete mismatch. As an industry, and I'm talking here about the tech industry, as a tech industry, what we need primarily, be it an engineer or be it, whatever field you come from, the first skill we require is learnability. How quickly can you unlearn and how quickly can you learn? In fact, one of the things I always advise young people whenever I'm talking to them is figure out how to demonstrate learnability, because that is what will get you through interviews.
Right.
Nothing else. It's the hunger for learning, being able to talk about the books that you have read, being
Right.
able to talk about the learning communities that you are part of, etc., becomes tremendously important. And then we are looking at foundations. So, how good is your foundation in science, maths? How good is your foundation in some of the newer areas, especially, for example, if you have applied for the position of a data analytics?
Yeah.
How good is your foundation in AI and data science?
Right.
How good is your foundation in statistics? So, relative to the field that you have applied, how good is your foundation? And then the third thing we look at is what you talked about, and which today's world has become tremendously important: professional skills. I do not like to call them soft skills, Kaveri, because somehow in our minds, we
Yeah.
have, given that a negative. It's like soft skills are women's skills. I don't
Yeah.
get that nonsense.
That's
I just
true.
totally don't get that nonsense. I'm happy if they're women's skills, because then women have an upper hand.
Yes,
Those skills are tremendously important. To me, they are professional skills:
that's true.
communication, collaboration, uh, design thinking, uh, ability to influence other people. In fact, a classic interview question that you will get is, influence someone to buy this product right now.
Yeah.
Let's see how you do it.
Yeah.
How good are you, right? So these are the skills that become tremendously important. And earlier we used to say engineers can sit in the back room and code, and as long as they know how to code well, we are good, right? Because our job required it. As an industry, we were creating payroll solutions and other solutions and scaling them across companies. Today, the nature of work has completely changed. Today, we are creating individualized end to end solutions with our customers. We are sitting down and figuring out how do we digitize their entire sales process, HR processes, business operations. So, you need your engineers out there.
Right.
You need them in front of the customers. You need them to be talking to the customers and jointly figuring out these solutions. So an engineer who can't speak or is not comfortable speaking is useless.
Yeah.
Another, there's a lot of hype about data analytics and data science in India. There are two things which is a must for you to be a good data science that will find a job, a good data scientist or a good data. Let me start, forget data scientist. Let me start with data analyst. That's easier for you to find a job. First and foremost, how good is your statistics? It's amazing how many people will come and say, we are interested in data analytics, but have not taken statistics. Statistics is like a must. You have to research your fields. You have to see what is needed. And the second thing is surprisingly storytelling.
Yeah.
Because if you cannot tell the story well, the insights is useless.
Yeah.
It will not be used. So that is the level of change we are seeing. And I sort of categorize them in those three broad skills, the foundation courses, the professional courses skills, and then last but not the least, you have to very convincingly demonstrate your learnability or your aptitude to learn.
Right. And how far are we from our goal of actually getting there? We have a new education policy in place. I'm sure you've seen it, which of course talks about all these things and talks about experiential learning. But how far are we from sort of completely reorienting our system? Because before the students, the teachers have to learn how to, unlearn and teach again.
I don't know if there's a goalpost that we can
Yeah,
put there because, we have arrived here after so many millions and millions of years
yeah,
of doing things a certain way. We are here. Definitely don't believe things will change overnight. But what we are seeing is bits and pieces of reforms and improvements happening. And as long as they happen fast and they happen at the right places, as long as we keep moving forward, I'm hopeful.
right.
I have no idea if there's a goalpost because, by the time we are near the goalpost, say 10, 15 years from now, the goalpost might be have completely changed
Absolutely.
because we are in such an industry. So I don't know, Kavri, but I guess what we have to measure. I mean, for the first thing, you talked about the national education policy. I'm a big fan of it. There's so many things in it that they have got right. I think key will be now how do you implement that?
Yeah,
It's going to be critical, and when we implement it we have to support it. I mean, when AICT came out with the announcement that they didn't say you don't need science and maths to be an engineer, but
yeah,
they said that they would welcome people with liberal arts, etc.,
right.
to try engineering as long as there are bridge courses, which is exactly the need of the hour.
And which
But
the NEP talks about interdisciplinary study.
absolutely, but look at the hue and
Yeah,
cry. So it's like for every step we take forward we ourselves bring ourselves back 10 steps. So but I guess that's human nature. So as long as we can continue to take the steps forward, we are good.
what about the reorienting of the industry, Devjani? There's so much talk about, India, of course, being a leader in the back office, but perhaps not being a leader in AI, which is the need of the hour, and China outstripping us and all that conversation. What do we need to do there?
First of all, it's too early to determine who's leading what.
Right.
AI is a very, 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 very long marathon,
Yeah.
and it's just about started. We've just started running, right? So I think we have to be fair to ourselves and stop saying someone has, nobody has reached the lead. The race to AI leadership is still on, and it's a
Right.
marathon, it's not
Right.
a sprint. I think that's good to understand. With the kind of resources China and US have invested, especially in research, I think they're way ahead of all other countries. I think here countries like India have to be very clever about what are the strengths that there's no point competing with on everything, right? We have to figure out where do we want to compete, where
Right.
can we make the maximum impact, have the maximum difference, and what are we good at, where do we have our inherent strengths. One of the areas where we have a very strong competitive advantage compared to any other country, be it China or US, is talent.
Right.
So for years, India has led the world when it came to STEM talent.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity, we actually have an upper hand to convert that advantage into an advantage in the digital era,
Right.
and start building digital skills. And I keep saying that India has to become what Israel did for the startup world. It
Yeah.
became the startup nation to the world. India has to become the digital talent nation to the world,
Hmm.
because talent is what will determine investments, competition, where the money will go, where companies will go. Talent is the biggest, it's such a scarce resource today, good talent, that if we can start building or becoming the base for digital talent that the world needs, the world will have to come to us.
Yeah.
So talent is one place where I do believe that we can definitely lead. Then we have to pick and choose. For example, agriculture.
Hmm.
It's not something a lot of countries will focus on, but for India, it is critical.
Right.
So we could pick that vertical and really build our R&D capabilities, etc., in agriculture to go and lead the world. And there could be other verticals like that. Um, so I would say we need to have a very segmented strategy um, for AI rather than going after everything.
Yeah, and you talked about the being the digital talent nation, and it doesn't necessarily then have to be exported, right? You can be anywhere in the world now and work from wherever you are.
You can be anywhere in the world, anywhere in India, work from where you are, contribute to your company's development. I know one of the examples I always give is Zoho.
Yeah.
Sridhar Vembu, first of all, sitting in the village, running the entire organization from the village, and not just that, he has now started setting up teams. So he was telling me that one of the development teams that actually works on one of the leading cutting edge products of Zoho is based in the village.
Wow.
And he is investing in the village in terms of improving their education, etc. So he can also hire people locally, right? Now, I think that's the beauty of this so called future of work that we are getting into, where working from anywhere, anytime will be a possibility. Um, it comes with a lot of pros and cons, Kaveri. So I don't want to say it's all perfect and it's all fantastic out there. It comes with a lot of pros and cons. But if we can navigate through the pros and cons and leverage it effectively, it will definitely increase India's competitive advantage.
What are the other areas? What about education and health? I think more than ever the pandemic showed us that these are two areas that India could really be the world's center in a way. Is it possible to leverage AI in these two fields and really become a global leader?
Oh, AI can be leveraged wherever we want it to be leveraged. So see, if you're talking about health, there is a lot of efforts that's going on in health across the globe, and the kind of R&D investments that some of the countries are making in health tech and AI in health, it'll be very difficult for India to match at a holistic level. But then if you start identifying specific problems, for example, one of the biggest problems in healthcare in India is the last mile access.
Yeah.
Because for us, last mile access has to happen in very low resource settings,
Hmm.
right? And talking about low resource, it could be, it's not just socioeconomic, right? But low broadband connectivity,
Right.
uh, infrastructure's poor, roads may not exist. So for us, the problem with healthcare is the last mile delivery. That's where it breaks down. Now, that's a unique challenge that India can solve because the rest of the world is focused on a lot of the big stuff, right? Now, we can go and solve some of these problems, which will not just help India, but will help millions and maybe billions of people across countries
Good.
like Africa and Asia, where they too are facing similar challenges with respect to last mile delivery. So once again, it is important for India to find those need. It's, I don't know if it's a niche or those specific problem statements where we can have an upper hand and we can build our leadership at a global level. So it's going to be very, very important for us to do that. And education, one of the things that I think and it's not just in education, but it applies to education tremendously. One of the things, again, challenges we face is access to good education, access to good teachers, especially at the last mile, right? So the deeper you go, access to good teachers becomes a big problem. Now, you may find good teachers and you may be able to, through technologies like AI, you can teleport them or you can have video conferencing sessions. But the problem is, India does not speak one language.
Yeah.
India speaks multiple languages. So unless you have a teacher who's fluent in all the languages, his or her ability to influence will be restricted to only that segment of audience who understand the language she is speaking, right? Now imagine AI being used to convert what I'm saying to you in English at simultaneously at the same time, real time, to all the different Indian languages.
Hmm.
That's the power of natural language processing in AI. And if we could work on that, it will require a lot of R&D efforts. But if we could work on that to create those capabilities, um, imagine the impact on India and, of course, the impact on the world.
Right. What is the state of our public-private partnerships currently? Do you feel that the private sector understands, and I'm not talking about just the IT companies, of course they know that, but do you feel the non-IT companies still, which are regarded as brick and mortar companies, understand the power of AI, understand the investments that need to be made, the things that they can do, perhaps in partnership with the government or state governments?
I think COVID has taught us there are no more brick and mortar companies.
Right.
And if you continue to choose to be only a brick and mortar company, you may not have a sustainable future.
Right.
I think that's a hard lesson that COVID has taught us. I mean, today, every company is digital. Every company is digital. It doesn't matter what you do. And I think you asked a great question, because CEOs today are no more debating whether they should automate or not. CEOs are debating how fast.
How fast?
How fast, and how do they do it in a way that it will strengthen their competitive advantage over the others, right? That's the debate, that's the discussion that we are having. And one of the feedback, or one of the things that I always advise any CEO who speaks to me about automating her company is, technology is getting democratized. You can procure all the solutions you want, so will your competition. What is going to differentiate you, what's going to be your biggest differentiator, is the people, your people. Do you have people who can leverage the technology better than your competition? That's what's going to determine whether you're going to be more successful or less successful. So it's going to be very important, because this is something, see, the IT industry has always been a knowledge industry.
Yeah.
So for us, people come first, no matter what. But this is a new mindset for the traditional analog industries to understand that it's not the technology, but it's really the people. And therefore, everything I talked about with respect to talent in your first question today applies to all of them.
But Debjani, do you see that respect for people first? Because, during the pandemic, we saw such large scale retrenchments. They were so heartbreaking. They've destroyed families, they've destroyed people. And they really didn't seem to be, I'm not saying that everyone was perhaps equally talented, but there didn't seem to be a respect for talent, for experience among a lot of the companies that, issued such large-scale retrenchments. Do you feel that mindset is changing, or is it still that one person is as good as another?
No, mindset is definitely changing, and frankly, it has to change in order for companies to survive. But again, every time we talk about Indian mindset, I always remind people that count the number of years it's taken us to build a certain mindset.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very difficult to disrupt. But there is one thing I want to bring out here, Kavri, which is, again, I'm just talking technology industry here, but this applies to all other industries. NASSCOM does an annual report card, strategic review for the IT industry, for the tech industry, and we publish it in Feb every year. So this year when we published it, just looking at jobs, while our industry thankfully emerged as a net employer of jobs, we created more jobs than what we went into 2020 with. But then what we saw was a major shift between the new age digital jobs and the traditional jobs, even within our industry. So traditional workforce went down from 80% to around 70%, but the digital workforce went up from 20% to around 26 or 28%, right? So now that is what's happening across. It's happening across industries. So you can't, now I'm not excusing companies that fire people without a cause, especially in a crisis. I think that is just not done. But for a company to be to it's all about businesses being more competitive. It's about businesses building beating competition. And as I said, ultimately, it comes down to the talent and the people, right? Companies need people with the right skills.
Yes.
So if you and I, as employees, refuse to get skilled, if you and I, as employees, say, no, we've done our job for 30 years, so we will continue doing our job the same way, sooner than later, unfortunately, we are not going to be relevant anymore.
That's true.
Because the jobs that require those traditional skills across industry, it's happening in your industry, in the media industry, it's happening in our industry, it's happening across. Those jobs that require traditional skills are fast going down.
Right.
They are being replaced by new jobs. So net, job creation is happening faster than job displacement.
Yeah.
But we are not skilling ourselves fast enough to keep up with that. I mean, just today, if you look at some of the data points, I'm just talking about India, not even the world, right? If you look at India, roughly our demand for digital jobs, data analytics, robotics, etc., is growing around maybe 32% CAGR.
Wow.
Right? The supply is somewhere in the range of 28%. So there's a big gap.
Big gap.
There's a huge gap that we have today. So the jobs exist, but the question that we have to ask is, do you have the right skills for the kind of jobs that exist today?
Yeah. And is your company willing to perhaps invest in you as well? That's another.
I would say, given how important this is for employability, whether your company is willing to invest or not, you invest in yourself.
Right.
This is like, or you buy, I'm sure you buy life insurance.
Yeah.
Right? Or you invest in a pension fund or something to make sure that it looks after you when you need it.
Right.
Investment in skills is exactly like that. You make the investment today, it will pay off for the rest of your life because it will keep you employable.
Right. Johnny, let's talk a little about women, because we've seen both the good and bad sides. Women, while they have been liberated to a great extent by the idea of working from home, it has also been seen to be a double burden, and we've seen both cases. So what has your understanding been of how to take this forward and how to have more women in the workforce, not just at the bottom, in the middle, but also right at the top?
So one is, each level requires a different strategy.
Yeah.
And we can't generalize and say, just do this and it'll solve all our problems. It won't. I mean, you are a very different woman from, who I am, and we will need individualized strategies. But I think there are few things. One is, there has to be a push and a pull. It's not just what the companies do, it's also what the women are doing, right? Today, for example, NASSCOM runs with the government the National Digital Skilling Initiative called Future Skills Prime, right? Why is it, and I ask this question in all sincerity, why is it that women participation, even when it is free, is less than 30%? Why is it that at least, for I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact percentage, but say, let's assume that for every man that signs on, around 20% actually complete courses. I'm just giving a hypothetical number. It could be 20, it could be 30 or whatever. The number of women is less than half of that who complete a course.
Right.
Why is it? And we have to, and this is a hard question we have to ask ourselves.
Right.
Nobody else is going to solve this problem for us. See, today, I honestly believe that the talent shortage is creating, and you may not like the sound of it, but it is creating opportunities, because companies, when faced with talent shortage, will be forced to give up all the filters they have so far applied to talent, gender filter, city filter, whatever filter, location filter. They will have to give up on those filters because they do not have a choice.
Right.
they have to find the best talent, whatever shape, size it exists in, wherever it exists. Now, like it or not, this does create opportunities because, like COVID significantly accelerated digital transformation, I think the talent shortage will significantly accelerate reforms in how we hire and how we retain people, right? It is going to be about employees with talent. They are going to have the negotiating power. So this $1 million question for me is, what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
When you or I walk in for an interview, can we with 100% confidence say that and thump the table and say, we are the best talent you can find, and here is why? Most women are still not doing that.
Right.
They're not. In fact, I just had an interview this morning. I was interviewing someone and I asked her, I said, for this is a very important job and I need to find the best talent for it. Can you tell me if you are the best talent? And she literally ducked under the table and said, it's not about being the best talent, or I will give my best. Whereas a guy I had the same,
Yeah.
absolutely said, I'm your man.
Yeah.
I can do the job better than anyone else. And by the way, she had better skills.
Yeah.
On paper, at least.
They've done it with that social conditioning. It's that whole imposter syndrome, isn't it? We've grown up with that idea. We have to get out of that. No.
This is like holding on to a tree and saying, I can't move.
Yeah.
If you really want to move, let go of the tree and start moving, right? I think there's enough of an ecosystem, there's enough of a tribe mentality that is now building to say, we have to move forward and we are going to take others along with us, right? So on one hand, I think something has to change within us.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that the gender card is not going to work. It's the skill card.
Yeah.
Skill card is most important. And when we walk into interviews, if we don't have a skill advantage, we have nothing. I think it's important for us to realize that and start getting our act together with respect to how we skill ourselves and how fast. On the company side, I think a few things are happening. As I said, the shortage of talent will force companies to become much more inclusive.
Yeah.
So many CEOs today are relooking at the language they use in job descriptions, language they use in requisitions that they send out, to see if that language is inclusive enough or it actually, and it's a fantastic thing to do.
Absolutely.
Fantastic thing. But why are they doing it? They're not doing it all of a sudden because they've woken up to diversity.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they realize unless they make those changes, they're not going to be able to find the best talent if the talent happens to be a woman, right? So I think the talent shortage is making companies take a very hard look at how they hire, how they find talent, the language, the practices, the processes, all of that is good stuff. Will it change overnight? No, but it will gradually keep changing. I think remote work is also good as long as the woman has the choice to decide whether it's amazing that there are more women coming to me and saying, I want to get back to work, to office, than men.
Yeah.
But that I have to get out of this
exactly
craziness.
Because you're on call 24/7. There's no option.
And I think until Indian men go through a major mindset change where they suddenly wake up one morning and realize that I have to contribute to housework, which by the way, a lot of good men do. But it's still not the majority mindset. And until and unless that happens, the woman is going to be tasked with all the household chores, like it or not. So women are actually dying to get out of the house and come back to work, right? So I think it's important for companies to realize that don't make the mistake of saying just because she's a woman, she'll be happy to work from home.
Right.
Give her the choice. Give her the choice. Let her decide. Indian homes, a lot of Indian homes are not meant for work from home.
Yeah.
So we have to think through all these things, but that having the choice will be brilliant.
Right.
Even to say that 3 days I'll go to office, 2 days I'll work from home.
Exactly.
That will be brilliant.
Debjani, it's such an exciting time to be in this industry. I mean, you've been in this industry now for what, over 2-3 decades. Has this been even more exciting than the opportunity of we had during Y2K? I still remember how excited we were as a country that yay, we were solving the problems of the world. But it's both a crisis and an opportunity, isn't it? Does it
Absolutely,
excite you,
absolutely.
inspire you?
I When I wake up in the morning, I honestly thank my stars
Yeah.
for being in this industry, for having the job that I have, because it's not for me, I don't have a front row seat to the greatest show of my life, but I'm a cast.
Yeah.
I'm right in the middle of it,
Right.
and in often as NASCOM, we get to play the role of ringmaster,
Yeah.
which is fantastic, or a catalyst, which is fantastic, right? So it is so inspiring because Gabri, I honestly believe that while we've talked about tech for good for years and
Yeah.
years and years, each with COVID, we finally realized what the true potential of technology is.
Absolutely.
What can technology really do for us? How it can so significantly improve our lives. I think now that we have realized, and we've also realized the power of innovation,
Yeah.
discovering the vaccine in 9 months.
Yeah.
My God, hats off to the scientists all over the world, right? But we've discovered the power of science. We've discovered the power of tech for good. We've discovered the power of innovation. And now I think we know enough to say we can't give up on it.
Yeah.
We have to now put it to work to solve. COVID is no way solved. We have to continue to work on that challenge, but other bigger challenges like sustainability, like climate change, how do we continue to improve in those areas? So for me, I think what we have seen till now is like a trailer. So that is very exciting because the full movie is still waiting to
Well,
happen.
yeah.
That's tremendously exciting. But yes, I think it's going to be very important for us to put down very clearly the design principles for how we use technology.
Right.
Because I often hear technology causes harm, and I violently disagree with that statement because technology, at least as of now, cannot think for itself and decide whether it wants to do harm or it wants to do good.
Yeah.
Us humans who
Yeah.
decide whether we are going to use it or misuse it, right? So it's going to be very important to have those design principles and what I call responsible build and use of tech. And I think that's the biggest challenge that's facing our industry, and something we have to get right if we want to continue to see sustainable growth in our industry.
Debjani, there's been so much conversation around precisely that, especially in the Silicon Valley, in terms of privacy, in terms of the access people have to knowledge about other people, especially the big four, the GAFA. And there's been a lot of rethinking about that. Do you subscribe to that?
Silicon Valley and the discussions are interesting.
Hmm.
I absolutely read about it. But as I can't remember who said it, but there was someone who said it brilliantly that Silicon Valley doesn't really have any big problems to solve.
That's true.
So it's great. The thought leadership is great, but I like to bring it to the context of the real world
Yeah.
and the problems that we have to solve to see how effective those discussions are. I'm a strong believer that we have to ensure, we have to build a framework for responsible build of technology and responsible use of technology.
Right.
And that framework cannot be driven by one-sided regulation that we leave to government or whoever, because a lot of people have said, oh, let the government figure out how they want to regulate us.
Yeah.
I do not subscribe to that. I do believe that it takes two to tango, And industry has to play a role to think about how it's going to self-regulate itself, and government will have to play a role to think about how it sets up a broad regulatory framework, and the two together have to create that holistic framework to figure out how we as an industry build and use technology responsibly. But it can't be we can't be pointing fingers and saying, oh, it's the government's responsibility to do it. It's the government and industry that has to play a role.
Debjani, what are you most proud of during your tenure at NASSCOM, at having achieved?
So much. So much.
I love that answer.
If I have to pick one thing, I would say the human spirit.
Right.
It's not about technology, the
Yeah.
human spirit in the industry, especially the human spirit that both my team at NASCOM and the industry showed in the crisis,
Right.
where it wasn't just about me and myself, it was about all of us.
Yeah.
It was about, okay, this works for me, let me quickly share it with the rest so
Yes.
everybody can benefit. It was about that realization that we are in this together, and we have to come out of this crisis stronger together, and then we can figure out how to compete with each other. But as an industry, we have to come out of this stronger. And was a huge learning moment for me. I mean, it was fascinating to see how it played out. And the other thing was, I realized that um, you know profitability and people go hand in hand. I mean, I always knew it, but I think the crisis really drove that home, because when when I remember we were expecting the lockdown, and at that time, if you remember, Kavri, a lot of our companies could not do have work from home because of the OSP guidelines. And all of us, I was in day-to-day discussions with CEOs saying, what do we do? Um, there was always two things on the table. Hey, we have to figure out how do we keep employees safe.
Right.
Priority one. And we have to figure out how to ensure we keep business running.
Right.
It can't be an either or story.
Right.
We have to do both. So we need to find a way where we achieve both objectives. And we cannot compromise on either. And I think the power of that conviction and the power of that belief forced us to think differently and come up with a solution which actually enabled the industry do both, which is, where remote working became a reality for this industry. So yeah, if I have to celebrate one thing, and I'm really, really proud. I'm so proud of the way the industry helped in COVID, from opening up kitchens to opening up campuses to create quarantine centers, um, to providing food to migrant laborers, to of course helping with their technology to fight, to help governments fight the pandemic. I mean, there was just so much that happened.
You're right. I think it was quite tremendous. I agree. And this conversation leaves me with so much hope for the future. So I hope it leaves our viewers as well. Debjani, one last question. Really, are we in a world where each of us can be like a bespoke expert in our areas, customizing ourselves according to what the market demands, and, yet sort of working in some collective?
See, I think we have to have some subject depth,
Yeah,
whatever the subject.
whatever. You have to have a domain expertise.
You,
Yeah.
you have to have some level of subject matter expertise. You have to have some level of domain expertise, because um, jack of all trade is unfortunately may not cut it for you.
Right.
So I think it's very important to have that. But I think even more important is my earlier point, the hunger to learn, the
Yeah.
willingness to learn, uh, training yourself to learn quickly becomes tremendously important, because today, if I'm super excited about artificial intelligence, and tomorrow suddenly I realize how bigger an impact quantum computing can have, do I have the ability to learn quickly?
Yeah.
And figure out what it means for our industry. Um, Otherwise, unfortunately, in a world that is changing so fast, um, you will become outdated very fast.
What is the one thing that you learned in the pandemic in terms of any new skill that you picked up? Did you work at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been saying that I wish I had learned how to code. I wish I had learned how to code as a kid. So I did use the pandemic to learn how to code.
Oh,
And I'm very, very proud of my uh, still growing, but whatever minimal coding skills I have, at least I can make things move, and I'm super
right.
happy with that. So I did learn that. I did learn. I took up yoga in a
Okay.
big way, and I've got pretty far as yoga is concerned. I've done, and just this was such an awesome time because before the pandemic, I used to use the 3 hours I spent traveling up and down to office and home, listening to certain podcasts,
Yeah.
etc.,
Yeah.
to keep the mind active. But I've rediscovered the joy of holding a book and reading because I wasn't traveling, and I have just been going crazy. I've been finishing like 4 5 books a week, and it's been just so fascinating.
What is the one thing you read recently which you recommend to everyone?
Two things. I keep all my books here. I
Yeah.
mean, the ones that I'm currently reading.
Yeah.
So the two that I just finished and I absolutely loved. One is this one, Transformation in Times of a Crisis.
Uh-huh.
It's a fabulous. It's about the IT industry, but I think anyone can relate to it. It's a fabulous book on how the industry and companies should transform and what is it that they should be looking at or not looking at. It's a brilliant, very well written. And this is by my dear friend Shiv. This is a book that everyone who's starting a career, midway through their career, should read. It's called The Right Choice,
Right.
and it's basically what he did was he got a lot of us to share very honestly some of the biggest dilemmas we have faced in our lives
Right.
and how we arrived at the right or the wrong decision and took it forward. And I think this is something we don't talk about, right? We always talk about, when we talk to successful people, we assume they've never had a
A
single
failure. Yeah.
problem ever in their lives, right? Which is so wrong. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, this really talks about the kind of dilemmas that one faces, and I loved both. I just finished these two and absolutely loved it.
Great. So we're going to pick those up right away. Thank you very much, Devjani Ghosh. Always a pleasure to talk to you and learn so much from you. Thank you.
Lovely talking to you, Kavri. Stay safe.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com, or even edxlive.com. If you're more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for watching. India is the youngest nation in the world and we are bubbling with new ideas. This is probably the best time to promote entrepreneurship in the country, right? And who better to tell us India's plan ahead than the Minister of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises? We have Nitin Gadkari, the Minister of MSME and Road Transport and Highways with us today. TNI Editorial Director Prabhu Chawla will be joining the conversation as well.
Good evening and namaskar. I am feeling honored to inform all of you that the ninth edition of the Think Education has been both fascinating and productive. Over 50 prominent speakers from numerous fields like politics, economics, art, entertainment, and literature spoke about what ails Indian education and how informal education could help become India an Atmanirbhar superpower. Now, it is my honor to invite Shri Nitin Gadkari to deliver his valedictory address at the ninth edition of the Think Education Conclave of the New Indian Express Group, which has been organized virtually for the first time. My friend, Mr. Gadkari, needs hardly introduction. He defies the oftenly repeatedly saying that either my way or highway, as he is always on the highway. He is perhaps the only minister in Narendra Modi's cabinet who is always on the move. He is omnipresent. He addresses almost 3 events or attends meetings on daily basis and also takes decisions faster than any one of us can think of. He has broken many records. He is a genuine and committed follower of his leader, Prime Minister Modi. If Modi is a man with a mission, Nitin Bhai is an idea machine. He has solutions for every problem. I would like Mr. Gadkari to speak on education and entrepreneurship, creating an army of job makers. Our overall theme of the conclave is lessons for a new world. Nitin Bhai, you are most welcome to express your ideas because I don't have to tell you what you have to speak.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
All dear friends, it is a great pleasure for me to interact with Prabhuji and New Indian Express. Our country, always I define it as we are a rich country with a poor population. The country is rich, but the population is poor. That is only because of wrong economic policies, bad and corrupt governance, and visionless leadership. We have got lot of strength as the Indian economy is concerned. Our software engineers are doing excellent job in the whole world. Our doctors are very much reputed in the UK and USA. As an Indian doctor, they have some special reputation. Regarding Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we need cooperation from the all stakeholders, what is exactly the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat? The presently, we need to understand the economic situation of last 70-80 years of the country. Before 47, 80 to 85% population belongs to rural India. And Mahatma Gandhi was always defined it as Bharat gaon mein basta hai. So actually 85% of the population when belongs to rural India, agriculture India, tribal India, forest area. Particularly this area now presently we have 115 aspirant districts. But the one thing which is very important and exactly on the basis of that we need to plan the policy for the future. That important policy is 30% there is a migration from urban area, from rural area to urban area. The population in the metro cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai and Bangalore is increased. Not by 2-3 times, but the 10-15 times. And the population from the rural India coming to these metro cities, it is only because of employment. The life standards, particularly the rural area, now have no availability of schools, colleges, hospitals, no entertainment, and no employment. The one of the reason is it is not proper, but one thing which I want to indicate that the last 70-80 years of the economy, we neglect rural India, agriculture India, tribal India, forest India, and that's the reason that we have 115 aspirant districts. And where the contribution per capita income and GDP from this area is very negligible. Now presently in Indian economy, the agriculture sector contributes 8 to 12%. The manufacturing sector coming to 22 to 24%. And the service sector, it comes to 52 to 56%. Now the population belongs to agriculture is the 65% presently is in the agriculture, rural and tribal India. And where income is only 8 to 12%. So this is the time that we need to think if we want to make Atmanirbhar Bharat. What is the meaning of Atmanirbhar Bharat? The meaning of Atmanirbhar Bharat is we need to increase our export. We need to create increase per capita income and GDP growth into the all part of the country. We need to develop, we need to reduce our imports, and at the same time, as education, health sector, everywhere, we need to take some qualitative reform. Actually, we are making road construction. When I had taken charge as a minister, it was coming to the 2 kilometer per day. But now today it coming to 35 kilometer per day. So we are now going to march ahead toward the target of 40 kilometer per day. I remember the sentence of American President John Kennedy. The John Kennedy says that the American roads are not good because America is rich, but America is rich because American roads are good. So for the prosperity, we need industries. For industries, we need capital investment. Without capital investment, we cannot create employment potential. And without employment potential, we cannot eradicate poverty. Now, this is the time for the country that we need to think into the two part. The urban India is India, and the rural India, agricultural India is Bharat. I remember one of the great thinker, activist, who were completely devoted for agriculture, Sharad Joshi, he always take it as India versus Bharat. I'm not taking it in a India versus Bharat, but I am talking you in the sense that it is the responsibility of India that is to develop Bharat equally. We cannot discriminate anybody on the basis of caste, creed, sex, religion, on any reason it may be. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. Social equality and economic equality is very important. And for that reason, we need to change our policies. I always tell to the people that you can donate eye, but you cannot donate vision. So appropriate vision for making Atmanirbhar Bharat is very important. So what is in this Atmanirbhar Bharat where we are thinking, where we need cooperation from all stakeholders? The first of all, the government had decided to make the infrastructure of 111 lakh crores. Actually, this infrastructure is in power. Because for development, we need 4 important things which are very important. That is water, power, transport, and communication. Regarding communication, we are already developed our country. Now 4G, 6G, we are on the path of that. The information technology, the electronics, digital India, and you know that lot of development is going on. So this is the future. And we need to manufacture hardware in India. Now our petroleum import bill is 8 lakh crore. We need to develop computer hardware and electronic hardware in the country. If we will not develop it, then our import will be within 5 years. It will be more than 25 lakh crores. We need to have manufacture mobile phone, laptop, everything here. For telecommunication instrument also, this is the time for the country that we should to take the upgrade our technology by taking the help of successful technology available in the world. And we should be import substitute and export oriented in the electronic field also. Today, as far as the communication is concerned, we are on the right path. The other important thing is the power. We have already historically, revolutionary, successfully working on solar power, green power. We are making lot of green power projects. One of the projects in Gujarat is the highest in the world. So this is the time that for green power is very important. The 3 important things which are the pillars of Indian society. One is ethics, second is economy, and third is ecology and environment. I feel that as far as the economy is concerned, I will talk about it, but as far as ecology and environment is very important. Presently, we are getting power from thermal power from the coal, and the pollution is a big concern. Either it is automobile pollution or either it is pollution from the power. This is the time that we need to take the action and we need to improve ecology and environment of the country. It is very important. It is independently a different subject. But presently, because of the pollution, air pollution and water pollution, we are facing a lot of problem. So this is the time that first of all, we need to resolve the problem of pollution. And for that reason, we have taken decision. In automobile sector, we are for the future. We are using the technology, ethanol, methanol, biodiesel, bio-CNG, electric and hydrogen fuel cell. As a transport minister, I am very much confident that within 2 years, the price of electric car and petroleum car, the price of two-wheeler, petroleum two-wheeler and electric two-wheeler, and price of diesel bus and electric bus will be equal. And electric is an indigenous fuel. We are power surplus. The lithium ion battery which we are using in the electric vehicle, the 81% of the lithium ion battery already we are making in India. I am confident that within 6 months, we will be in position to make 100% lithium ion battery in the country. Then there is no problem about lithium. There are a lot of feeling in the market that the lithium is, the shortage of lithium is there. It is not the problem. Presently, we will accept the lithium ion technology on that. And we will see that our electric vehicle, we will start on the lithium ion battery. But at the same time, it is a great pride for me that 1 month before we have a long, big meeting from ISRO, DRDO, our all technical organizations, research organization of science and technology, advisor of Prime Minister, science and technology advisor also was there. And at that meeting, we are decided to work on zinc ion, metal ion, particularly that theory, zinc ion, aluminum ion, sodium ion, and steel ion. We are also working on hydrogen fuel cell. From water, we will get green hydrogen. And our future is that we will run our all buses transport on green hydrogen. Already we have taken initiative for that. We can make the ethanol economy size is 20,000 crore, and within 5 years we want to make it of 2 lakh crore. The biofuel economy, the ethanol, bio-CNG. Now we have giving permission, not making ethanol only from rice, from sugarcane juice or molasses or BAB molasses. But now government is giving permission to make ethanol from rice, about food grain, corn and wheat and everything. Because we have corn surplus, rice surplus, wheat surplus and sugar surplus. Presently, we are already the international price and market price. Compare with wheat, rice, corn, is actually our MSP is higher than international price and market price. Just it was reported in the parliament that 4 lakh crore from the government we are just spending to giving farmer for giving their MSP. So this is the time that diversification of agriculture towards energy and power sector. The most important thing is the solid waste management and liquid waste management. We can make this economy of 5 lakh crore. I can give hundreds of examples, successful example. In my own city in Nagpur, we are selling our sewage water to Maharashtra government for power generation and getting 325 crore rupees as a royalty. In Mathura, in Namami Gange, I initiate the project. The company Triveni Engineering, we are now recycling 80 MLD sludge of Mathura, and clean water we are giving to Indian Oil, and they are giving 20 crore royalty every year for clean Ganga mission. So there are a lot of projects. We can get from that water, from solid waste management, liquid waste management, we get methane. And by byproduct methane from CO2, we will get bio-CNG. So 100% we can make biofertilizer. So there are a lot of new technology which are available, and we need to apply that technology into rural agriculture and tribal field, and where we can use the technology by which we can make Indian economy strong to create more employment potential, particularly solid waste management and liquid waste management. So the ecology and environment is the main concern. The other is the water, power, transport and communication. As far as the power, we are surplus. We are marching ahead towards green power. We are now breaking world record, and already a lot of green power we are generating. The other important thing is water. We don't have shortage of water. We need planning in water. My NGO has get international award. Just it's a great award. It's because of water conservation. We have a mission. We are in missionary mode in Maharashtra because I'm from Vidarbha, where 10,000 farmer suicides are there. There is a simple slogan: दौड़ने वाले पानी को चलने के लिए लगाओ, चलने वाले पानी को रुकने के लिए लगाओ, और रुके हुए पानी को जमीन को पीने के लिए लगाओ. गांव का पानी गांव में, खेत का पानी खेत में, घर का पानी घर में. आज देखो, the water problem is not the problem of whole country. Water problem is a problem of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, then Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Orissa. So here lot of water is going to the sea. When I was water resources minister, there is a lot of dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu related with the water of Kaveri. At that time, the river connectivity project, taking surplus water from one basin to another basin, we have planned, and this is very important for Tamil Nadu. At that time, I prepared the scheme. Taking the Polavaram Dam, it is a very, very big dam. We are spending 60,000 crore on Polavaram. As a water resource, I help them. And still after this dam, 1,300 TMC of water is going to the sea. So we have decided to take this water, 400 TMC of water, which is going to the sea. In place of sea, we will take this water from Godavari to Krishna, Krishna to Pennar, and Pennar to Kaveri. It is going to the tail end of Tamil Nadu. So that was the dream project which is going to resolve the water problem of the Tamil Nadu. We need water in Tamil Nadu. At the same time, we can encourage breach cum bandhara. I am making 170 breach cum bandhara in Maharashtra. In Latur, probably you remember, we have taken water by railway. That was the water problem. So we are making 3 breach cum bandhara, means the bridge is there. At the same time, we stop the water, and up to 7 to 8 kilometer water is there. It can be used for water conservation. It can use for drinking water. It can use for irrigation. So there is a lot of new innovation in water conservation. Exactly the most important thing for the country and most important issue is river connectivity program. And the second thing is most water conservation program. The most important thing when I was Minister of Water, so there are 13 disputes from 1970 between the states. And it's really a great pleasure for me. We resolved all the subject, only 3 out of which was the problem. Regarding Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, I resolved all the issues. But there is one problem, actually, that is related with Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, is Ken Betwa. Just 8-10 days before it was resolved. And there was 2 projects. In Maharashtra and Gujarat, there are still problem. One is Pinjar, Daman Ganga Pinjar, and other is the Tapi Nar Narmada. Actually, 2 projects we can make it, river connectivity project. We can resolve the water problem of Maharashtra. So this is the time that this is not an impossible problem. We can resolve it. And even the sewage water available in the different cities, we can take money, we can get money from that. We can solve the problem related with the air water pollution, and we can resolve the issue. At the time of Ganga, it was a great task and challenge with me as a minister. We have awarded 70 to 80% of the total project of 25,000 crore we have sanctioned. And Prabhuji, it is a great work in my life. At the time of the Kumbh when I was there, it was Aviral and Nirmal Ganga. So still the projects are going that Ganga is polluted in Kanpur everywhere. And we have decided to take 40 rivers and nalas who are connecting to Ganga. Actually, lot of work is going on in this direction. We need to improve this water pollution problem in the many rivers. It's a big task. For the future economy and for the future Atmanirbhar Bharat, the water problem is the most important problem. Water, power, these are 2 crucial problems, and we have got the enough potential that we can resolve that. In Atmanirbhar Bharat, making infrastructure for power, water, we are doing lot of projects. Our irrigation in the country is approximately 35 of the land is irrigated. But we can make it 55 to 60% of the land irrigated. For that purpose, we should not irrigate water through the canal, but we can make drip irrigation, by which we can increase the use of water 3 times more and increase the production by 2.5 times agriculture production. So as you take the example of Israel, lot of farmers are doing this on our country. So my second important thing is about the infrastructure. We are making waterways, we are making ports, Our 12 major ports are doing excellent jobs. At the time when I was Minister for Shipping and Ports, we increased our capacity 2 to 3 times. We have completed waterways in Ganga from Varanasi to Haldia. Then Haldia to Brahmaputra, the Bengal Sea was there. And for Bengal Sea, we complete the dredging in Brahmaputra. Even I enter into Bangladesh for Mungli Port, complete the dredging. Then we complete the dredging for Barak River. And now we can make waterways in India. Waterways and sea transport is the future for the country. We can start amphibious seaplane. We don't need airport. We have at the time when I was minister, we clear all the things and we started amphibious seaplane in Gujarat for Sardar Sarovar. And now I am estimating the cost of this plane, 18-seater plane, into 16 to 18 crore. It is amphibious. So we can make 5,000 water ports, and where the plane can start, it can 100% going to change our transport sector. So this is the future. We can start catamaran, hovercrafts, airboats, and increase the tourism. Already in Mumbai to Goa, we have already started the cruise tourism. There's a huge potential. We can create a lot of employment potential. In Varanasi also, the cruise tourism is there. So 100%, this is a field where we need to develop good infrastructure. So regarding the water transport, I am giving one example. If today 85% of our traffic and passenger traffic and goods traffic is on the road, the railway is reducing their traffic. This is not good. Our first priority is to waterways, second priority to railway, and third priority to road, and fourth priority to aviation. By going by road, for example, the cost is 10 rupees. By going by waterways, the cost is only 1 rupees. Going by railway, cost is 6 rupees. Going by road is 10 rupees, and going by waterways is only 1 rupees. So we need to develop. And Prabhuji, I am telling you, I am not a leader who is only talking nonsense. I have prepared the project for World Bank, starting from Yamuna in Delhi, making dredging in Yamuna, and starting waterways from Delhi, going to Mathura, Mathura to Agra, Agra to Etawah, Etawah to Allahabad. Allahabad to Varanasi, I have completed waterways, 2-meter draft is there. And Varanasi up to Northeast, Southeast Asia, even going to China, Bangladesh, everywhere you can go waterways. My dream was taking the material of Punjab and Haryana into Delhi from Sonipat, Panipat. We can make the waterways and taking this material into the barge and the ship and taking it up to the China, up to the Indonesia, Malaysia. And this can be a revolutionary change in the country. Because the logistic cost is the concern. The logistic cost in USA and European countries is 12%. Logistic cost in China is 8%. And you go anywhere in the European country, industrial area is near to the river. And because of waterways, their logistic cost is very less. And Indian logistic cost is 18%. Our target is we need to reduce logistic cost up to 12%, by which we will be more competent in international market. We will increase our export and we will get good business from the whole world. So this is the time that we need to reduce the logistic cost, power cost, and at the same time, production cost. By labor cost and by reducing production cost and improve the quality. Without compromising the quality, we will be successful, particularly in the export market. So this is exactly the idea behind it, because our policy is import, we want to reduce, export, we want to increase, and we want to develop agriculture, rural and tribal area. The last my point is with the Atmanirbhar Bharatis. The agriculture, rural, tribal India, 150 aspirant districts are the basically our highest priority. Presently, as a MSME minister, my ministry, my MSME is contribute 30% in the growth, GDP growth. And 48% of the export of our country is from MSME. And up till now, we have created 11 crore jobs. But now our idea is to take it this 30% of contribution in GDP, we want to take it up to 40%. 48% of the export, we want to take it up to 60%. And we are planning for creating 5 crore new jobs. Now the village industry, Khadi Gramodyog and village industry turnover is 88,000 crore. And within 5 years, we can want to make it 5 lakh crores. I will show you some samples. This is the paint. in my room. Actually, I'll show it. It is from cow dung. We can make this paint of international standard. The all laboratories has verified it, and it is of the international standard. The cost is half of the whatever the paints and distemper available in the market. This is the paint from the renowned company. So the half of the price, the farmer will get 5 rupees per kg for cow dung. Suppose he has got 5 animals, he will get 15,000 rupees per month. So I am searching the technology which are going to create employment potential in the village area, and where we are working on that line. And I'm confident that 100% we are working on it. I will give you the example of this is fabric. This is 50% cotton and 15% bamboo. And these are the, Prabhuji, you can use this shirt also. So beautiful shirts from 50% bamboo and 50% cotton. We need to develop jute, coir, bamboo, linen, cotton mixer, silk, sericulture silk, which is Banarasi silk. And we can make a lot of imports. We are making shoes in Khadi Gramodyog, and we are using Khadi denim in it. The Levi's is a company in the USA. They are taking our all Khadi denim to USA. And now we are making shoes from this Banarasi silk, Madhubani painting, and is the this Khadi the denim, Khadi denim also we are using for that. So by new designs, new quality, new vision, we need to develop the new products using the best technology available in the world. On the basis of that, my target is to make Indian village industry and rural economy turnover. We want to take it up to 5 lakh crores. We are going to create more jobs in rural agriculture, tribal India, and by which 100%, whatever the imbalance presently there, we can remove that imbalance. And जो लोग गांव से आए वो गांव वापस जाएंगे फिर से एक बार. There will be good colleges, good schools. There is internet is already there. There is a drinking water problem, no problem with there. We are making scheme for that. There will be Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, houses are there. We can make smart cities. Not only smart cities, we can make smart villages. So this is exactly the future of India. And this future is exactly the thinking of Atmanirbhar Bharat of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. And our economy is very strong. I am confident in due course of time, we are 100% going to make Indian economy #1 global economy in the world. Our automobile industry's turnover is for 7,50,000 crore. It is under my ministry, and I am confident that within 5 years we will make it 10 lakh crores, and we will be the #1 manufacturing hub in the world, automobile hub in the world, and all brands are present in India. So India has got a very bright future. There are problems because of COVID-19. We are facing some crucial problem. In economy also we are facing some problem, but we will win over the situation. And I always talking to the people, giving 3 songs which inspired me and motivated. One of Atal Bihari Vajpayee's, that kadam se kadam milakar chalna hoga. The second is कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. And third is हम होंगे कामयाब. So this is a great dream of our Prime Minister to make India Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I am confident that 100% we will achieve that goal in due course of time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Gadkari ji, as usual, you are full of energy and ideas, and I think Mr. Modi needs more ministers like you in his cabinet. Basic thing, because since it's education conclave, you talked about 4 E's in your lecture: ethics, economy, ecology, and environment. I want to add the 5th E, education, because you spoke in the last term, because India lives in villages. You said कि जो है भारत जो है गांव में रहता है. Question arises here, as you rightly pointed out, that 60% of Indian population gets only 10 to 12% of GDP. And you said कि लोग शहर से गांव की तरफ वापस जाएं. For that, what your ideas of rural India, your ideas of creating industries and or job opportunity, 5 crore job create करेंगे. It is all linked to not education. Formal education, I am not talking about it. But you have to collect, for example, Gandhi Commonwealth you have got. How you want to link the rural skill, जो चीजें आपने बताई हैं कि बैम्बू से शर्ट बनना है या कोई और लोकल चीजें आपने बनाई हैं, वट एवर यू हैव मेड लोकल, स्मृति ईरानी जी इज डूइंग हिज ओन हर ओन जॉब, बट दैट स्किल डेवलपमेंट इन प्लेस ऑफ फॉर्मल किताबी जो पढ़ाई जाती है, उसके लिए योर मिनिस्ट्री MSME, particularly खादी ग्रामोद्योग, because it exists in all the villages almost. Why can't you use that to create informal education, skill development in the rural area? जो वहाँ के बच्चे हैं, लड़कियां हैं, they can also contribute in the production process and they get not only skill, they also get the market.
Actually, Prabhuji, you are absolutely correct, 100% correct. And this, whatever the 2 points you raise about the education, skill, and giving employment is very important. The skill development, actually, because of short of time, I cannot touch that subject. The education is most important thing. The value-based education, knowledge is the power. Innovation, entrepreneurship, science, technology, research, skill, and successful practices. We name it as a knowledge, and conversion of knowledge into wealth is the future for the country. You are absolutely correct. 100%. We need to concentrate more on education. And actually, the education is going to decide the future of this country. And the other part of your 100% is equally correct. I will add this fourth E in my 3's as a education. And the other important thing is with education, we need to develop business-oriented skill development training.
Correct.
This is very important. Because you may have a good degree, but you must understand the skilled. And for that reason, the poor population, which is socially, economically, educationally backward, we need to develop their skilled, giving them training, giving them support of appropriate machinery, and making the products of international standard. So exactly, you are absolutely correct. Your 2 points are 100%. I am supporting that. And 100% these are the part of our Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we will take it. And the other part also, I have not touched too much because of time, that is of health sector. We can create lot of medical, at least we can make 600 medical colleges, at least 50 AIMS. We can open 500 colleges for nursing, for paramedical courses. There is a huge potential is available in medical sector. We are making medical devices, just like different type of devices in the country. Huge potential is available. The pharmaceutical sector, our export is very big. We can make that. We have the capability of all the things. So with education and skill development, we have the health sector is equally important. And the third important thing is we need to develop the young generation to give them facility for sports. Every village there will be a ground where we have students who can make practice for their Indian games and even for other games also. So this is exactly we can build new India. So you are absolutely correct. For that reason, we have to make the vision for India in the different sector. We have to consider all points because of short of time. It was not time for me to get more explain about it. But people like you can make it to be elaborate in a way and making a future vision for India for next 50 years. How we can make Indian economy globally number one. How we can make India as number one country. And I am telling you one thing. I am the person, many times I am talking about a lot of new ideas out of box. But Prabhuji, in my whole life, my emphasis is, first of all, on the ground level, we want to implement that. Whatever I am talking, only talking is not sufficient. We need on to grassroots level to implement the things. And in many of the cases today, what I am talking with you, 90% of the things what I am talking with you in my ministry, already we have implemented, and that is very important. Because theory is important, but the practical is more important than that. So true. The implementation on the grassroots level is very, very important.
I'll ask you the last question. The question is, you have got a KVIC with you. Because that is, as I told you, why don't you connect the KIC outlets with the rural areas where they can give skill training, buy products created by them? It can be you like you are buying for corporate, you're getting Raymond involved into it, you are getting the various people. But KVIC should be connected with the rural India. That was the whole idea of Mahatma Gandhi at that time. So KVIC is becoming such a big organization, corporatized, because it's doing a good work and it's improving very well. So I think you can create employment. You can also create informal education skill development by KBIC household becoming the household name, giving them training as well. And like चरखा आप लोगों ने बनाया, बाकी चीजें बनाई, मोमबत्तियां बनाई. So why can't you expand that into that area?
Actually, Prabhu, you are absolutely correct. And now we have Amazon they have taking 70,000 crore material of Indian MSMEs. And you know the success story of Amazon. Yeah. Then Alibaba size is 6 times the budget of Indian economy, Alibaba's turnover. So in the operation of State Bank, we are making starting our portal for MSME and Khadi Gramodyog, and the name is Bharat Craft. And the project now is ready, and within a month we are going to launch this portal. And whatever you are expecting from us, all this paint, this Prakrutik paint and everything, Khadi Gramodyog, everything will be available on that site, and there will be a professional portal like Amazon and Alibaba. Our Bharat Craft will be there, and 100% it will going to fulfill your all expectations, and it will encourage the rural agriculture, tribal youth, industries, handloom, handicrafts, khadi, gramodyog, and will give them good turnover.
This is the last question. Everything depends on good governance. Good governance, because Prime Minister Modi has been talking about good governance, and you have been talking about, I'm saying you're so active that you're speaking on every subject everywhere. Without even looking at the books, you can talk on any subject anywhere. I've seen from medical education to agriculture to water to technology. You are the master of all the experts things. So when it comes to good governance, that is what is lacking in India. How you ensure good governance from top to bottom? It is top-down approach has to be there.
Actually, I want to give you some details about it. Just I am talking with the Parliament question. Aadhaar authentication based contactless services. Only in my department today I am getting this information. List of services made contactless, digitalized. Learner's license, renewal of driving license for which test of competence to drive is not required. Duplicate driving license, change of address in driving license and certificate registration, issue of international driving permit, surrender of class vehicle from license, application for technology registration of motor vehicle, application for registration of motor vehicle with fully built body, application for issue of duplicate certificate registration, application for grant of NOC for certificate of registration, notice of transfer of ownership of motor vehicle, application for transfer of ownership of motor vehicle, intimation of change of address in certificate of registration, application for registration for driver training for accredited driver training center, application for registration of motor vehicle of diplomatic officer, application for assignment of fresh registration mark of motor vehicle of diplomat officer, endorsement of hire purchase agreement, termination of hire purchase agreement, already written to all states. Yeah, already we have started all digitized. The most important thing is you have to take your that RTO tax record, driving license with you. But we have making a special provision for that. Now driving license can be renewed anytime between 1 year before it expiry till on your after its expiry. Now this all documents are available in your mobile phone. You can show. Then a dealer point registration is also online. All forms and fees online. Documents in electronic form legally all online. Driving license renewed online. International driving permit can be made online. Vehicle recall portal be registered complaints about a defect is online. So our government has at least a close 1500 acts. Utne कायदे खत्म हो गए. And everywhere in the department, we have taken a lot of decisions regarding the ease of business. And it is to be a corruption-free system. Because everything you need to go to an RTO office. So now everything is now national permit, digitalized. You don't need to go to the office. So we have taken a lot of decision, and already there is a lot of change. And I feel that 100% the ease of business, I am giving you the guarantee. From last 75 years, 72, 73 years, whatever the reform for ease of business taken by our government under the leadership of Modi ji, just 6 years, our track record compare with the previous government, I will tell you at least 5 times more. And every department has taken a lot of decision. You are equally important that we need to improve ease of business. There are some sectors where we need to work more regarding corporations, municipal corporation systems, and there we need some digitalized system, the sanction of maps and other thing. But we need to develop this, and we are on the path, and we will make it that.
Last question, you see, our Think Education Conclave, you see what we have been trying for the past 8 years. I believe that India के अंदर जो आपने कहा है, it is possible only when the Indian education system change, you technology implementation, thinking the way you think. It has to be done. जब तक Indian education का भारतीयकरण नहीं होगा, तब तक आत्मनिर्भर भारत नहीं बन सकता. ये मेरा मानना है. आप इसे सहमत है कि नहीं?
देखिए, भारतीयकरण की अर्थ क्या है ये पहले समझना होगा. देखो, ज्ञान, विज्ञान, तंत्र विज्ञान, इनोवेशन, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, साइंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, नॉलेज एज ए पावर. हमें दुनिया की सबसे बेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी होगी लेनी चाहिए. जो वर्ल्ड में अच्छा है वो स्वीकारना चाहिए. तो पहली बात, नॉलेज एज ए पावर विच इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर एजुकेशन. सेकेंड थिंग, इकोनॉमी, इसके लिए स्किल डेवलपमेंट, ट्रेनिंग और जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज क्रिएट करना एजुकेशन के द्वारा. सभी लोगों ने रिसर्च स्कॉलर बनने की आवश्यकता नहीं है. कोई ड्राइवर बनेगा, कोई स्पेशली कोई स्किल जॉब करेगा, वही कोई डेंटिस्ट के यहाँ काम करेगा, वही काम करेगा. तो
That's not available, ना? You can't find plumber now in this country.
तो स्किल, ट्रेन, मैन पावर, उसको तैयार करना. और तीसरी, जिससे रोजगार मिलेगा, क्योंकि रोजगार जब तक नहीं मिलेगा तो एजुकेशन और ट्रेनिंग का और स्किल का कोई मतलब नहीं है. तो सब लोग रोजगार के लिए नहीं, कोई रिसर्च के लिए जाएंगे, कोई डॉक्टरेट होंगे, कोई ये जाएंगे. और द थर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग विच इज रिलेटेड विथ योर क्वेश्चन, that is value based education and value based family system. मूल्य, जीवन मूल्य, जैसे परिवार पद्धति is the strength for Indian society. इतिहास, संस्कृति और विरासत के आधार पर, वैल्यूज के आधार पर, वैल्यूज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. मैं गलत काम नहीं करूंगा, मैं ईमानदारी से काम करूंगा, गलत मार्ग से नहीं जाऊंगा. ये जो संस्कार है, these are the values, वो एजुकेशन के द्वारा भविष्य के नागरिकों में निर्माण करनी होगी. तो एक तरफ ज्ञान, विज्ञान, तंत्र विज्ञान से प्रगति, देश इकोनॉमी नंबर 1 पर जाएगी. दूसरी ओर इतिहास, संस्कृति, विरासत और वैल्यू बेस्ड एजुकेशन, जिसका नाम आपने भारतीयकरण दिया है. कभी कभी लोग इसको मिसअंडरस्टूड करते हैं, पर जो भारतीय संस्कृति, इतिहास, विरासत, आयुर्वेद, योग, विज्ञान से लेकर सब हमारी है, उसके साथ वैल्यूज जो हमारी सबसे बड़ी विशेषता है, जो विवेकानंद जी ने कही है, उस वैल्यूज के आधार पर शिक्षा के द्वारा संस्कार करके हमें भविष्य का नागरिक भी ऐसा बनाना है कि जो केवल भौतिकवाद और भोग विलास में नहीं होगा, तो वो मूल्याधिष्ठित जीवन पद्धति के आधार पर वर्ल्ड के लिए आदर्श भी बनेगा.
मैं आप ही का सेंटेंस वे आई एम गोइंग टू कोट यू बिकॉज़ वेदर यू आवर वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन सिस्टम व्हिच यू हैव बीन फॉलोइंग एंड करप्शन सिस्टम व्हिच हैज हैपेंड हैज कन्वर्टेड भारत इनटू इंडिया. Whether you would like to have a system which converts India into Bharat.
Exactly, you need to understand the meaning of two subjects. भारत एंड इंडिया, मैंने जो एक्सप्लेन किया आपको कि ग्रामीण, कृषि, रूरल, ट्राइबल, एग्रीकल्चर इंडिया, जहां 65% पॉपुलेशन बसती है, जो दिल्ली, मुंबई, बेंगलोर, चेन्नई से उनका कनेक्ट नहीं हो पा रहा, वो सोशली, इकोनॉमिकली, एजुकेशनली बैकवर्ड है. और इसलिए अर्बन इंडिया और रूरल इंडिया का भारत, इसके बीच की गैप कम करना होगा, सस्टेनेबिलिटी को बढ़ाना होगा, वहां रोजगार के अवसर तैयार करने होंगे, हेल्थ सेक्टर, एजुकेशन सेक्टर में फैसिलिटी क्रिएट करनी पड़ेगी, 24 आवर बिजली मिलेगी, हर देहात के घर में इंटरनेट.
नितिन जी, आप बड़े उसमें, मैं सीधा सवाल है मेरा एकदम कि भारत का विकास होना चाहिए या इंडिया का विकास होना चाहिए?
देखो, दोनों का विकास होना चाहिए, दोनों एक में को पूरक है, किसी के साथ अन्याय नहीं होना चाहिए, दोनों एक दूसरे को पूरक है. अगर इंडिया में कैपिटल तैयार होगा और वो अगर भारत में जाएगा तो वहां की गरीबी, भुखमरी, बेरोजगारी दूर होगी, वहां रोजगार तैयार होगा. मैं इसमें विवादों में नहीं पढ़ना चाहता. मैंने अपने शब्दों के पीछे जो स्पिरिट है, बिटवीन लेटर एंड स्पिरिट, वो स्पिरिट मेरा जो है, जो मैंने आपको कहा वही है.
चलो, आपने बहुत अच्छी बातें कही. You said so many ideas you have given. Everybody fond of you anyway. Everybody knows the minister who's the most active minister in Modi's cabinet. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com, or even edxlive.com. If you are more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for watching.